Start over. All right, it is now 2:01 on November 6th. I will now open this special Grand County Commission Budget Workshop. Present are Commissioners Kevin Walker, Evan Clapper, Bill Winfield, Tricia Dean, Mike McCurdy, Mary McGann, and myself, Jacques Hadler, as well as our County Clerk, Gabriel Wojtek, our Budget Director, Stephen Vowles, and our County Administrator, Gwen Hall. I will now turn the workshop over. Let's see, Gabe, are you running the workshop or Steve?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. But why don't you kick off any intro? No, okay. What's your number?
Yeah, I would say that we started the process of the budget season essentially with the meeting of the Budget Advisory Board, and that board met over the course of 6 meetings, received all the department expense requests for the 2025 budget. At this point, the Budget Advisory Board has forwarded a recommendation to consider the tentative budget as it's currently displayed. With any necessary adjustments that will need to be made to balance that budget in the appropriate manner. And so here we're getting into the meat of it with regards to sort of synthesizing and summing up those requests in any way that we in the ways that we can through a series of workshops that we'll need to call and we'll receive feedback from you all appropriately to be able to further refine these presentations and solicit discussion as needed to get to our final goal. So I'll hand it over to Stephen. Thanks.
Very good. So I consider this workshop as the next step from taking the budget, proposed budget or tentative budget from department heads to a balanced budget that we will finally approve by December 17th. So I think this is a working session. We're going to show you the current status of the budget. We're going to show some charts and discuss some of the gaps that need to be filled. So with that, let me just start with the top of the budget or our agenda. Now I'm going to click on this document called the tentative budget condition. All right. We have a budget right now.
Steve, can you blow that up at all? So
blow it up? Oh, sure. There we go. Better. Thank you. All right. So presently, our tentative budget includes, and maybe I don't know if this needs discussion, but we do include an $800,000 provision for a traditional underspend or over budget. This is the traditional thing, so I just wanted to call that out right now. The general fund has an $800,000 provision because we normally underspend what we budget. Let me just pause right there. Does that need an approval, or is that just a tradition that is carried forward based on performance, actual to budget performance over time? It matches last year. Okay. Yeah. So there's assumption number 1. Assumption number 2. Oh yeah.
On that topic, I think at the last budget advisory board meeting, we said we might want to look at what the actual underspend has been in the last few years.
Yeah, and so I did update that analysis, and I'll have to include it in a future workshop, in the next workshop. But I did update it. I just didn't go about finalizing that documentation for presentation. And it does continue to support that action, but I will be able to provide that sort of.
Okay, so 800,000 still seems like the right number too.
Yeah, definitely. I would say even in regards to the way that last year's budget came in, I would say it more than supports 800K.
So maybe we should raise it from 800 to.
That could be something worth discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's assumption number 1. Assumption number 2 is that I presently have what I'm going to call a pessimistic revenue projection for 2025. Kevin and I and the Budget Advisory Board, I've worked on a bunch of revenue projections based on the the tax data today. And I'm going to present you some charge, which actually I think may be the most pessimistic view of revenue projection, but this is a dialogue that we can have. And I intentionally picked a pessimistic view because I think in budgeting, there's less risk in going under than over and not having it happen. So I'm going to present some charts, and Kevin and I have had some great dialogue over this. But just to give you a preview of the revenue projection, it really depends on the time horizon that we use. Like, for example, if we use a year over year revenue forecast, it would be about a positive 1%. If we use a 7-year, it would be about a 21%. We use a 3-year, it's a minus 1%. Right now, I'm using a 3-year average, and I can go over some of the numbers, but a 3-year average just shows that we're going down. So, but we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen next year. So, but we need to put some number in the budget so we can go about the business of balancing it. So that's a key action for us today. Pessimistic, optimistic, realistic. I've tried to slice and dice this anyway. Any questions?
Do we want to kind of talk about them as he?
Well, I'm going to show some charts in
Okay,
a
great.
minute.
Okay,
So I'm giving you the
Sounds good.
context here.
Yeah.
So the present budget
Okay.
shows a pessimistic view of revenue in 2025. Just kind of put that in your head. So that leaves us, our general fund, presently is $728,808 over budget. Already we need to carve out $729,000. But we have some other options in here that are being considered. Hold it. $288,000. The sheriff's office would like to get a URS contribution, a county contribution for the URS, and Jameson talked about that. In fact, let me get through this and then maybe we can have Jameson talk about that. Stay around.
That's health insurance, yeah.
Chris can talk about the elected official salary and benefit adjustment. And it's anywhere from 6,000 to 177. So I've assumed the worst case position or the largest case, not the worst case. New positions that Tessa's going to talk about, 908,000. 6 new reclasses, 17,000. So thinking large case, we have to carve out $2.2 million in the budget to balance it, assuming we're just going to balance it straight up. I know we got some options. We could just balance it by taking out 2.2 million, or maybe there's some taking out of the general fund, because I will show you that the general fund has a $10 million fund balance right now. So, but this is our job right now. Presently, we got to take 2.2 million out if all of these things are approved. New positions. That's why they're down here. So that's our job for today. Just talk about all these and show the supporting material.
Thank you, Stephen. Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And actually just down here, the pessimistic forecasts I'm using for 2025, if I use my methodology, which is open for dialogue, debate, I show TRT at about minus 1.9, restaurant positive 8.4, sales and the county option positive 1.7, hospital up 1.1. Other tourism, the off-road vehicle, short-term rental, minus 8.7. So an overall about a minus 1. This is the pessimistic view. That's just what's baked in our
Minus.
budget right now.
about -1.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, let me show you the tentative budget. I mean, it's out there, but it's just a huge. It's just a huge master spreadsheet. We are going to put it into Cassell, which is our, automated system. Right now, it's just a huge Google Doc that everyone has been working on. So me going through this huge thing is really not going to be use of our time, but know that this is the tentative budget. We're going to be working on it. We've highlighted some areas. I've made a separate sheet here that we will go over in the latter part of this meeting where I've highlighted some of those areas that are maybe prime for consideration for cost cutting. But this is our tentative budget. I've shared it with you. We'll just keep this open for reference. But since Evan, I'm gonna give Evan, he challenged me today, Stephen, he said, Stephen, bring some charts, because I want some charts. So I made a couple of charts, and I didn't put the numbers here, but this is based on the 2024 budget. It shows all taxes. Property tax. Oh, yeah. Property tax 25%, TRT 33, sales tax 7, restaurant 4, hospital 12, county highway 4, county options 5, off-road vehicle 2, library and mosquito 6 and 2. So just as a visual, we can use this as a reference. Now, took it right out of the 2024 budget. It's nothing forecasted here. This is. And then one other chart for reference is
So Stephen, before you leave the pie chart, I mean, it would be useful to have a similar chart that just showed things for the general fund. I assume.
well, this one right here, I didn't get this in a pie chart, but this one is the general fund 2024 budget with all the major.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just meant the revenue also. Sure. 'Cause some of those taxes are not.
Well, what I'm hoping to take away today, and one of the reasons Evan asked for some charts, and I said, hey, let's talk about it, because I'd really like to know what you guys need, because I have the data. You give me a homework assignment and say, here's what would help us make decisions. I can go work on those. But today I just kind of brought in this pie chart of all taxes as a percentage of what taxpayers pay. That's why I included mosquito, library. I mean, everyone's paying taxes. But I did this little breakout of what the 24 budget looked like in terms of the departments, so you get an idea of where the budget's going to in terms.
Do you mind scooching it back so I can see that, basically the y-axis? The numbers, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
the y-axis.
So, and I'll just keep, reference, and I'll put them in our packet. Actually, I have a Google Drive that I'll make sure you guys are all part of, that I call Commission Workshop. It's all put in today's packet except for this chart. But I'll create a little Google Drive, so as we go through this, you guys can have everything that I've created. But anyway, as a reference, so we can come back to as we go through this conversation. But if any questions there, I want to start with, well, I started with our task of, we got 2.2 million gap. We got to start filling it. A big part of that gap is, well, actually, let's go to Jameson first. Since you're here, if you could just kind of describe or justify the $82,000 charge, and we can just discuss that.
Yeah, that works great, James.
You guys have a document from HR or anything like that for the URS? Just to show.
I think I have it. I can pull it up, but I do have the number right here, 82,876, but while we do that, I'll see if I can.
So I'll just explain what the tier 2 and the tier 1 system is. The tier 1 system is a system that no longer exists. Back in the day, a good incentive to get into law enforcement was the retirement portion for URS. And they said, you work 20 years, you pay into this URS, which the county has picked up, it's 35%. And you get to retire at 50% of what your 3 highest wages were. Back in like 2014, the state of Utah changed that, and they said, we need to make some changes to this. Let's change it to 25 years at 35%. And when they did that, they started watching the recruitment rate fall, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And we were trying to tell the state of Utah, hey, it's because you changed the retirement system. And so they said, okay, we're going to keep it at 25 years, but now we're going to give you the 50% if you can make it to 25 years. However, your agencies or counties are going to have to pick up the difference. I remember bringing this up under the last sheriff. It was never presented to the commission. And so I've got around 21 public safety employees that includes dispatch, the jail, and the patrol that are paying into their own retirement, since the county hasn't picked that up, and that they pay 4.73% out of their own pockets to their retirement. And I've done some research. I've asked at the sheriff's office, the state of Utah Department of Public Safety, have you guys picked up this 4.73%? The retirement, and the majority of the agencies have picked it up, and they're picking it up because they're trying to use it as a recruitment tool and a retention tool. So any new employee moving forward is going to be on this tier 2 system, and if we don't pick it up, they're going to continue to keep paying out of their own pocket into the retirement system. So like they were talking about, how much is it?
82,000.
$82,000
$83,000.
About 83.
for 21 public safety employees. And like I said, that's dispatch employees, the jail staff and the patrol staff. So if we want to try to retain good help, we really need to try to pick up that percentage for their retirement. So. Any questions on that?
And you did talk to other sheriff's departments around the
And
state, found
The majority of the sheriff's offices have picked it up. Some departments have gave them more money per hour to try to offset it. So, but the majority just picked it up.
And majority means like 10 out of 12.
I don't have that in front of me, but I would say it was like 75% of the sheriff's offices picked it up.
And that would cost 83,000.
yeah, 83,000.
82,876 to cover that.
So, and another, something to be aware of is like the Moab City Police Department, they don't pick that up currently. And we're always going back and forth between the city and the county, and they make more money per hour. Well, if we pick up your retirement, that's a huge thing, and it's a great incentive to stick around. And people don't really often think about the retirement nowadays, but if they were smart, they would pay attention to that. Right. So.
They did pull up that workbook, but I'm not sure if this is what
Oh, yeah.
Angie would really grade it. It shows.
The other notes that I have written down here is on the tier 1 public safety, which is the old system, which half my office is on. The county is paying 35.21%. If the county picks up this percentage that we're asking, which is 4.73, the county would be paying 31.22. So it's actually still cheaper than what we're paying on the tier 1 system. So they're just having to work another additional 5 years at retirement.
And that percentage is a percentage of the salaries.
Yes.
Goes to retirement.
And then, like I said, the state of Utah has said, your retirements can be based off of your 3 or 4 highest years, whatever you're making that, and then you would get 50% of that.
So I'm not sure we have to take action on this today, but this is definitely one of the.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll publish this little document in our drive that you guys talked about.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions for Jameson while he's up here? Okay, great. Thank you, Jameson.
All right, next up are the new positions and other items that we just talked about. Let me go back to let's see, this one right here.
Stephen, I think just we can do that. If that works for you all, or we can also go in and actually open the PowerPoint so that it takes up the full screen. That might be a little easier since we're going to be looking at so many numbers.
Yeah. It's down there.
I'll go ahead and formally introduce myself. I've had the opportunity to meet all of you, or I've had previous interactions with you, so it's good to see everybody. My name's Tess Barger. I'm the new Personnel Services Director. This is going to be my first commission meeting in this capacity, not the first time I presented before the commission. So go ahead and get started.
It's like an open.
Great, okay,
So-
that works just fine
Okay.
for me. Is everybody able to, we'll again, if we need to zoom in, once we start looking at numbers, we can do so.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and preface that it is in fact not November sixth, 2025. But I had been looking at the year 2025
Right.
so much while creating this presentation, I just got a little ahead of myself. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll first talk about compensation proposals. Thank you so much. And then we'll switch into discussing new positions as well as proposals for reclassifications. And I've made space for us to talk about these topics after we complete compensation and then after we complete the position request. But of course, we should feel very encouraged to ask questions throughout. And so this is just the overview of what we'll first cover in our compensation request. We'll be talking about the philosophy, which comes from the employee handbook, the cost of living adjustment proposal for 2025, our proposed grade and step charts for employees, and then our elected official pay chart. And I know that Chris Kaufman will be speaking additionally regarding elected official salaries. So I preface this with saying that the numbers that we came up with for the pay charts are based on current elected official salaries with the consideration of the COLA added. So this Grand County Employee Handbook statement was pulled, it was shown in last year's presentation as well. And I think it's good guidance for us as we enter into this conversation that as Grand County, our obligations and our goal is to pursue, thank you so much, competitive and comparable compensation step and grade plans for our staff. We want to ensure that we're able to base our salaries on the labor market, and while balancing trying to ensure that we have a high quality workforce, we're also balancing making sure that we are making decisions that are consistent to uphold the public's trust with how we're allocating our funds. So the cost of living adjustment proposal, it is our recommendation, both in our handbook as well as the practice that we have followed as a county, to follow the Social Security Administration's recommendation. They come out every October with a cost of living adjustment announcement. They base this off of the Consumer Price Index, which is issued by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And what this Consumer Price Index looks at is essentially us being able to ensure that our employees are able to keep the strength of their dollar. So the power of their dollar maintains even with inflation. So this year they issued the recommendation of a 2.5% COLA. And so all of the numbers that we have come up with are based on this 2.5%. That being said, even though that's a recommendation, it has been our practice, we do have some options in terms of how we approach cost of living adjustment. So I went ahead and included a chart of historically for the last 10 years, what we've done. We have followed quite comparably to the annual Social Security Administration COLA recommendation. That being said, in an example of one of those other options, in 2018, the county did elect to apply a COLA mid-year as opposed to as of January 1. Some other options that I've either seen other entities follow is, theoretically, we could offer, if we're not feeling financially comfortable, we could offer a lesser COLA. We could offer a higher COLA than that 2.5%. I've also previously worked for an employer that essentially did a staggered COLA based on the wage category that different employees fell into. So for those that were in those lower tiers of salary, they received a higher COLA. And for those in higher paying positions, they received a lesser COLA so that this gap between our lower grade positions and our higher grade positions doesn't continue to grow and grow and grow over time. So those are the options that we do have in front of us. Do we have any questions about that so far? So we went ahead and drafted our grade and step charts, both without as well as with a COLA, so that you all have that information in front of you. Our 2025 draft without the cost of living adjustment is exactly the same as our 2024, because of course, we would not be adjusting any of our starting salaries. And would anybody like or appreciate a refresher on the grade versus step
We're
measurement?
familiar with that.
Everybody feels good about that? Okay, great, excellent. And as a very short, just for anybody who's perhaps listening or isn't aware, grades are assigned to a specific position. And a grade is assigned from 1 up to 30, 30 being highest. And it's based on skill set, oversight, and responsibilities that are delegated to that position. Whereas step is assigned to a specific candidate or employee based on years of relevant experience. So the grade is assigned to the position, the step is assigned to the individual employee. And then this is our draft of our grade and step chart for 2025, if we factor in that 2.5% COLA increase, or excuse me, adjustment. And I have the numbers of what that total impact will look like after these slides. So we did the exact same thing for our elected officials. We provided a cost of living adjustment chart without that COLA, which means that the amounts would stay exactly as is. And then we also have our chart or pay chart that has that 2.5% COLA factored in. So these are our approximate numbers, our estimates for what that increase would look like if we put it into effect for both employees and elected officials. We would be looking at approximately $400,554.08. What I will say as a caveat is that you will see an increase in salary between 2024 to 2025, regardless of a COLA, and that's because we were factoring in employees that will be getting either a milestone or exemplary increase to their salaries. So that's just when you're comparing numbers from last year, you will still see an increase in 2025, even if we do not put that COLA in place.
We'll make a comment. I think I noted it earlier. Only about 288,000 of this COLA is related to the gym.
How much?
288.
Have any questions right now? Okay,
Thank you.
great. You all are making this very easy on me. I appreciate it. We'll see if that trend continues. So we'll go ahead and move into position requests now. And so I very much so appreciated the feedback of the Budget Advisory Board. They indicated that having this broken into and really being able to look at what is going to hit the general fund is most helpful. And so we have 10 positions, 10 new positions being proposed and 6 reclassifications as of the time that this presentation was published. That being said, I did have a conversation with a department head earlier today where they decided to rescind one of those proposals. So we will actually only be looking at 9 new position proposals today.
As a matter of action here, are we going to approve these or just have a description of what these are for further consideration or further action, just to kind of set the tone?
Yeah, go ahead, Quinn.
Last year we sat on a spreadsheet, right, and everybody kind of ranked
That's right.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
positions. That was how the commission.
Yeah.
So today wouldn't be a decision, but we could do a ranking exercise in between this and the next meeting. I think is how we did it last year.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
I felt pretty comfortable with that method also.
Yeah, yes, you all made determinations at the November 28th meeting.
Yeah.
And we can also discuss at the end of this, how you all would like a survey structured. I know that there were a few different options proposed at the Budget Advisory Board meeting, so we can figure out what's gonna work best for you all in terms of going through that process.
The column on the right, is that
These are our reclassifications, and then these are our new position requests. And these are, we actually, again, upon having a more clarifying conversation with this department head, the invasive species technician position is actually also grant funded.
Right.
So we'll be having a different conversation about that. Yes.
Do you guys mind describing that process in the budget advisory committee? I would assume these department heads come to you, they talk to you about the positions. Can you just give a brief description of that process so that the general public understands? They're not just flippantly asking.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
Well, it's a great question.
okay,
Because I'm new to the county, right, this year as the finance officer, budget officer. I asked all department heads to propose the budget that they believe they require to run their operation next year. So it was kind of open-ended. It was almost like bring it in. So
right.
most of these came through that budget process
Okay.
of saying,
Okay,
to run my business, I need this, but
Right.
I didn't really press for the hard justification
Okay.
at that point, the balancing.
Right.
Now.
And then, to go off of that, from what Steven said, so then in early October, the Personnel Services Department sent out a survey to all department heads and asked them to essentially formally request a reclassification or new proposal, where we asked those questions of, have you looked at compensation data? Do you have a recommendation for a grade, et cetera? We collected information on, what does your ideal candidate look like, so that we could estimate a step of years of experience, so that we could come to as close to an accurate projection as possible. And so that was what the process looked like on the back end to collect more specific information. We'll also have justifications, and that was information that was also requested from department heads, because they are, of course, the experts on what the needs of their department are. Yes.
And I'd like to just note too, that I believe we were well into our third or even fourth meeting, Steve, when you and I talked about the fact that we really need that information up front, and it needs to be delivered to these department heads ahead of time, that what our projections are for the year. So if you ask departments to just come in and request new positions, clearly that's what they're gonna do. But if they have an idea of the constraints that the commission is under financially, I think that makes a difference, that they know that information and that they can work with it up ahead of time, so that there isn't a huge ask over and above what,
Yeah.
because as we're talking, Steve's got a 1% decrease, so some of these aren't gonna make it, and they might not have even needed to make it this far if we make sure we're communicating that ahead of time, I guess is where I'm going with it.
Good point, Bill, but we did let everyone know, assume a flat revenue. I probably didn't say that when I said, give me your budget for what you think you need to run your operation, but assume a flat revenue.
Right.
But still,
Sure.
departments are gonna ask.
Well, I guess that's where I'm like, I want to make sure that people are asking based on need and not just pie in the sky want, not,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Need compared to want. And that still doesn't help, because the reality is everybody's not going to get what they need, but
Right, absolutely. No, I very much so appreciate that. And to kind of further speak to that, Stephen has already circled back to department heads and asked, if there is, if you added any cushion that you're probably not gonna need, let's start having these conversations now. How can we be as fiscally responsible going into budget season? And I firmly believe that that's why, for instance, I had a department head come in today and say, I'm actually gonna rescind, I need this position, but theoretically, I can't wait, right? And I had another department head also decide to rescind a request for the same reason. So the department heads, I think that because we are immersed in this world and in these conversations on a day-to-day basis, they are very aware of the position that the county's in, and they are trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible,
thank you.
while also advocating for their employees. And
Right,
departments.
right.
All right, very good. Well, we'll go ahead and move into them. So what I did is, if there was a job description either available for a position, or if there was a drafted job description provided to me by a department head, I went ahead and linked that. You'll also see below that I linked if a department head requested assistance coming up with a compensation data survey. Then we in personnel services did go ahead and provide assistance with that. We use a compensation data survey website where other entities within the state, so other counties, et cetera, post their positions with title, pay grade, et cetera. So first up, we have the airport operations manager proposal. This is put forth by, of course, our airport, and this position actually previously was in existence. And when Tammy Howland moved into the airport director position and they essentially restructured their staffing, then this position went away. That being said, as you can see in Tammy's justification, just the sheer volume of individuals and services coming out of the airport, as well as the fact that they're now staffing a 14-hour day has really led to them needing additional resources. There are also specific referring to the aircraft firefighting duties. There are regulations put down by the FAA, and though we meet those requirements, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're meeting them best practice. So they need to have a certain number of ARP certified staff on site at all times. And because of this expanse of the number of hours that they're servicing at the airport, they're having a very difficult time meeting the very minimum of that, which means that we certainly don't have what would necessarily be a comfortable level of staff if there were some emergency out at the airport. So that was the reasoning behind Tammy's request. Do we have any questions on this position?
Are those working days longer because of I know there's a commercial flight that comes in at, I think it's 9 o'clock these days,
Yes,
right?
and if it's late, they have to stay
Yeah.
until it comes in.
And their primary duties would be the ARF stuff?
Yes, and so what they would be doing is assisting managing ARF and ensuring that we're staying in compliance with that, while also assisting with other airport operations. I know that currently they have staff that are in a sense kind of fulfilling this role, just without, essentially the title and the appropriate compensation. And then the job description is I've left it the same as it was in a number of years ago when we first had this position. And so we can either open up and look at that job description now together, or if you all would like to, in between now and the next meeting, review that, then we can certainly do that.
So I know it is a position request here, but even if we have people that are looking towards filling this spot that are already employed, there's a gap of money in between this salary and their current salary.
Yes.
That we fill a lot less than 126K.
Right.
Can we have that information along too, or?
So you mean in terms of having, say, reclassification information?
Yeah, are we looking to reclassify? Are we actually looking at reclassifying people, or are we looking for a
Great question.
new job?
So the reason for this new position is, again, going back to that, having essentially the minimum amount of ARP staff members on site. And so they need another person who is ARP certified. That's the long and the short of it, right? And so ultimately, even if, say, an internal candidate were promoted into this position, that would still leave a vacancy that if we are essentially going to maintain ARP standards, we would need to backfill that position to ensure we have the right number of people on site.
Understand, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can still certainly provide the reclassification information on the back end as well.
I guess there's the perception that the airport's not as busy with this, that there's not as many commercial flights coming in and out. But the bigger picture with the smaller flights could be different. But I just note that because I've heard that.
Yeah, I think that, I'm not denying the need for another employee out there. I'm just wondering if it needs to be at a manager level. I don't know.
Right.
If there, so I know when we had this position before, they did a lot more than just the firefighting. So.
And was this the position that Tammy actually had before she was promoted to the airport director? Okay, so we basically promoted Tammy to airport director, didn't, and then eliminated the position that she previously had occupied.
I guess I don't, we just didn't fill it for that following year and then did it get deleted out of the budget after that? I'm not 100% sure, but it never got filled.
Huh, okay. And that went back
I
to.
don't think we deleted it on purpose. I just
Right,
didn't
okay.
get filled.
And that was 2022. I think Tammy was in the middle of 2022, if I remember right, or early 2022.
Additional questions on this proposal before we move on?
So I would say that if we're gonna consider it in the future, that I'd like to see the data, because as Jacques mentioned, I know that employments aren't half, but they're almost half of last year. So to consider that we're talking about a busier airport, I don't believe our FBO is seeing that. I'm not seeing it in the, as I'm the liaison on the board, in the director's report when she brings it in. I'm not denying she might need to move some staff around to meet the fire requirements, but the busier airport is questionable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will happily wrap back to Tammy. And this is why this meeting is incredibly helpful to
Yeah.
me is I similarly, am not the expert on these positions. And so being able to support the department heads in quantifying why they need these positions is very important.
And I would just go back to Mike's point too, if we are putting somebody in a position that they're filling a higher duty, it would be a lot cheaper, I would think, to consider changing their grade and step than it would be to bring on a new employee, considering where we are this year in the future, maybe, but.
Yes, thank you. I'll make sure, I'll both talk with Tammy about, providing some data as well as I'll go ahead and provide some reclassification projections as well. Thank you. All right, are we okay to move on?
Yeah.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you all.
Just a time check, probably about, what time do you guys have till? What time do you-
4 o'clock is our hard deadline.
Great. That's the cue to start moving in group, and that's my.
Right.
So this court security deputy and drug court pretrial service deputy is actually a position that is being grant funded for 1 year. My understanding, based on having talked with Jail Commander Hackwell, is that the commission has previously essentially agreed to this position.
Right.
We were okay with accepting this grant funding, et cetera. So for this year, our position cost that we, as the county, would be absorbing would be $8,925. And that would be for those payroll costs, payroll taxes, workers' compensation, insurance. The benefits as well as the salary will be covered by the grant. And I went ahead and did projections for 2026 and beyond. Just with using the grade 13, step 15, we would be looking at a full employee cost of about $172,000 after this year.
Right. So we're pretty much guaranteeing that's going to be a new position next year that we'll have to fund. As it's grant covered
That
this
would
year.
be the assumption.
Right.
That being said, it's ultimately, up to the commission, but that would be the assumption that if this position is approved and brought on, that we would maintain it after that first year of grant funding.
Is there a sorry, go ahead.
We're okay.
Particular reason that the salary starts so high? Is there a skill set? I mean,
Great
to me, that's a
question.
really high salary.
Yep, so for the grade 13, that is the same, we looked at comparable positions, and so we have these other level of deputy positions at a grade 13. We projected it at a step 15, based on Commander Hackwell's feedback that there is a strong likelihood that an employee that already has 15 plus years of service experience would likely apply for this position. And so specifically within public safety, they get a 1-for-1 when it comes to
That's right.
steps. So they only have to have been serving for 15 years to reach the top step. So that's where those projections came from, is what is our likely applicant going to look like in terms of skill set, but also experience. Yep, so theoretically, this could be lesser if, say, a deputy with only 5 years of experience applies.
So you're just kind of going top.
Exactly.
And in the, our previous budget meeting, Shan spoke to, that this could possibly be continued grant funding. We're just
Same thing.
the make sure in case.
Or partially grant funded.
Yeah, or partially grant funded in the,
Yeah.
for future years, but we are putting it in budget.
No guarantee there.
Yeah, but as no guarantee. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of operating again on the more conservative side of saying, we have the information in front of us that we know it will be covered for this year, and we can't make any assumptions after that.
Yep.
Exactly. Do we have any questions on this position? Okay. This next position is the Deputy Emergency Manager. They would be supervised by Cora Phillips, our Emergency Management Director, who works out of the Grand County Sheriff's Office. And I'll go ahead and scroll down so that you're able to see Cora's justification. We classified this as at a grade 13, which is comparable to other manager or essentially second in command positions across the county. And calculated it using a step 3. So assuming somebody has at least about 6 years of relevant experience. Again, that would be the very likely applicant. The primary justification for this is that we are required by Utah Code 53-2A-807 to essentially have a line of command during emergency and disaster events. Currently, that line looks like Cora and then followed by 2 Grand County Sheriff Office employees, including Sheriff Wiggins, as well as Jennifer Swenson. The point that Cora makes is that in these emergency events and disasters, those 2 individuals are already very heavily delegated elsewhere and really cannot provide any backup to her position. Additionally, nobody else essentially is able to backfill her responsibilities if she has to, say, be out of town, take care of family, etc. And so leaving ourselves vulnerable without any additional staff that has the training and certification that she has and is required is leaving us quite vulnerable. Do we have any questions about this?
So she's basically arguing that it's just during times of emergency that this position would be critical.
Yes, and additionally, she indicates that she's very often to meet the demands of this one person department. She's very often facing overtime or the inability to accomplish all of the projects that need to be accomplished. And so there is that more year-round consideration in place as well. Do we have any questions that would be helpful for me to follow up with Cora on specifically?
I guess for me, and I understand, and she put that during monsoon season, it's specifically very important. But then we have another, basically, at least half of the year where that's not the case. And so I'd like to know what that individual is going to be doing, right? Are they looking into FEMA funding? Are they, what would that job entail? Yeah. And I guess on top of that, sorry, Steve, is it feasible to take somebody from the existing sheriff's department and, train them in a manner, elevate their pay, basically? Anyways, yeah, I want to support Cora because I know the stress that she's under during that time period. But then I wonder about the rest of the year. So
Trish, I was just gonna say that too. Just repurpose another job to
Right.
fill that.
Since we have Mayor Jameson, would you mind?
Yeah.
Do you mind coming forward to
Yeah.
sitting at the mic again if you okay, yeah, thank you.
A lot of other sheriff's office have their chief deputies act as the emergency manager. I mean, currently my chief does when Courtney stays off, or I do it as well if she needs days off.
And I believe Jenny did it before Cora was.
Yeah, our dispatch supervisor did it.
Right.
Any other?
What was your, I guess, just what's your thinking on this position as far as the criticality, and also to answer Trish's question, is there anybody else in the sheriff's office that might be able to increase salary and responsibilities and some training to help cover this during the times that it's necessary to?
I think an option we can think about is putting more, making my chief deputy wear more hats. He probably we could talk to them about it. Like I said, other sheriff's office do that. I would hope, I was kind of hoping that there was gonna be a grant available for this,
Yeah.
but I figured
Right.
with FEMA that there would be something, but
Right.
she says that she's looked and can't find one.
Yeah, I mean, and it's feasible if we funded it the first year that they could be looking for grant funding to fund themselves after that. I mean, so it's a thought.
Or even a
process.
part-time,
Right,
I don't think necessarily it needs to be full-time.
yeah,
She needs days off.
Yep.
She, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And monsoon season, I mean, I'm on call 365, 24/7, but monsoon season, we're all expected to just jump out at a moment's notice. So, I
Right.
mean, part-time, we can also look at, adding more responsibilities onto the chief's plate or
Yeah.
on my plate as well. So,
Jameson, you have that other part-time position, the evidence tech. I mean, I'm just throwing this idea out of melding the two, so you have a full-time position, because I know it's really hard to
Yeah.
find part-timers. So.
Yeah.
So that might be,
That
just
might
throwing
be
that
Teamwork.
idea out, yeah.
Yeah.
I can also, combining the responsibilities of both, if that is something
Okay.
that we could look at even as an option, I can combine those responsibilities, grade it accordingly and
Awesome.
I can have that projection available
Okay.
as well.
Yeah, that might be a nice idea.
All right.
So the planning and zoning department, and I see for, yes.
Dan's here, yeah.
We are here, that's what I thought I
Okay.
saw. So luckily we have folks in the room if we have any questions. We are requesting an engineering technician as a part-time position. And this would, assist with, excuse me, completing inspections on new development projects. And also being able to write up reports, enter it into the systems that they use. And I know that Dan has a very heavy plate, and so this would essentially increase efficiency, as well as timeliness of the services provided out of the planning and zoning department specific to our county engineers' duties. What questions do we have regarding this?
Yeah, Bill.
I know that we're increasing Dan's load like crazy over flooding, and is this going to help in that portion? Because that's really where I see that we need to put our money when we start considering new positions, and I consider the flooding and the assessor's office my two highest priorities moving forward. And so I'd like to make sure that that's what we're doing here, is allowing for more effort on the flooding side of things. So thank you both for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we did want to add, and we both kind of slipped our minds, but we wanted to add to the description of why it's needed. So currently, both the building department and the planning department are recognizing the need for an engineer to do additional inspections on not only the storm drainage facilities that are being proposed as part of these developments, but also making sure the natural and historic drainage ways are not disturbed. And we're looking at code revisions as far as should there be additional setbacks and things like that. So we've been increasing Dan's load, asking him to go out and do more inspections related to those issues. And so we all talked with Bill Holst, the building official as well, that we both feel would be really beneficial to have someone that could do that. Because Dan is often, I know, working on lots of other projects as well.
Yeah, one of the reasons that wasn't included in this write-up is that I had initially put under the storm water mitigation fund a contract employee to do that service. So it makes sense to combine the two to where we have someone that's can be doing seasonal inspections on stormwater facilities pre-monsoon season, be able to, send out letters to various homeowners associations and alert them to what needs to be done, follow up on that, see those things done, and then post-storm is also a biggie. So there was a little bit of this confusion, but I think this position could do both of those. And I noticed in looking at other position descriptions throughout the state that some cities, not so much counties, but cities have specific stormwater inspector engineering techs on their staffing, so that could be, it is a thing, it's,
What do you think the price tag for the contract work would be? That's comparable.
I think more importantly, it's hard to find a contract person that is readily available and that is in the area. And so I think that's one reason we thought about this. And I'll let Dan keep answering.
I mean, before you, we contracted all of this.
right. I'm trying to, it would depend a lot on the year, the weather, I mean, to just do a seasonal, ready thing and mark it up. I could imagine that could be done in a few weeks, then there's some follow-up by a competent person. And then if it never rained during the whole summer and we didn't have any major events, it probably wouldn't need to happen again until next spring. But if there were events, it takes someone going out there and identifying, okay, you need to do X, Y, Z, like this needs to happen. You need to remove all the silt. You need to clean out your outlet control structure. You need to flush your pipes. You need to do whatever. And then the follow through on that is actually pretty time consuming as well when you're working with homeowners associations. And then also just being alerting to, I got a lot of calls this year about my neighbor did this and now I'm flooding where I did before. I mean, I probably fielded 50 of those at least, maybe 100.
And in addition to that, there's daily inspections on building permits that also relate to those issues where we're looking at infrastructure, we're looking at storm drain facilities. And so that's an ongoing daily year-round inspections that are needed.
Just in my experience with the homeowners associations and the storm systems that we do have, we're doing 0 inspections or very, very minimal currently, which is compounding the issue downstream on many of these systems on other homeowners. And so it seems pretty important for the flooding mitigation that we've all discussed about putting some money towards, that this is one effort that would help start cleaning some of that up.
Yeah, I think if we have follow through on that, it's gonna be perhaps painful for a year or two, but I think with a good strict program and a lot of follow through on things, where we actually, on all the plats for these, we actually have written onto them the authority the county can come in and do the maintenance and back charge the entity for it, but it's a bit of an idle threat right now because we don't really, people call it, but do that.
Not to piggyback on some of this, but are we gonna get buy-in for a part-time engineering technician at
Well,
$23,000?
I don't know.
That seems cheap even in my own construction.
I-
That's what I was
I-
wondering, actually.
I kept it part-time because I was aware of what budget projections were and the flat thing, and so I was trying to come in under that. I mean, yes, it will be difficult to recruit for no matter what. Recruiting for a part-time is gonna have to be a candidate that maybe is qualified, but is in Moab by choice, by lifestyle choice, and wants to make some income, but not be committed to a full-time job, and that's, hit or miss. But there's certainly people in the community that might fall into that category.
And not to add to the pile here, would we not be better off just asking for a full-time position, especially for for these first 2 years, for the first 3 years to get ahead of this problem? I mean, there's a willingness across this entire commission to put money to this to help forward, flood mitigation. But,
Sure.
If we can't hire for 2 years out because $23K is not very much money for an engineer.
Well, I think that was where, again, as Dan mentioned, we were trying to watch the budget. So if that's something that we feel, yes, we could utilize a full-time person. We're certainly willing to look at that, but that would be an increase. But yeah, and I'll let Dan speak to this as well, but just figuring out how this position is going to work and exactly how it's going to work with the building department and with planning and zoning and kind of working out some of those kinks. It might be that we then increase this position to a full-time later, but I'll let Dan speak to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I noticed in the packet, the cost for the position is roughly double what's on the screen right now. Is that? Was there a typo or just?
In the
decided?
packet, I have the estimated salaries 42,800 something.
And so that was because initially, and this was just a miscommunication that I hadn't clarified, but the planning and zoning department had recommended a grade 15.
I was just wondering whether it was a
No,
mistake or just an attempt
it
to
wasn't a mistake. It
economize.
was essentially a change in grade based on state compensation
thanks.
data. Thank you.
So I just want to be clear, is what's being
This,
presented here?
this is, the grade 10 is what is comparable to other positions of this caliber in the state. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Amy and Dan?
Not from you. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you all so much. And this position has already been mentioned, of course. This is the evidence technician part-time position being brought forth by the Grant County Sheriff's Office. I know that this position has previously been requested in some different iterations. I believe that there is a possibility, and Sheriff Wiggins would be able to speak to this. It might have been requested as a full-time position last year, but is currently being requested at a part-time position. And do we have any, I know especially because you all have seen this position request before, do we have any specific questions?
So it's like a project position?
No, so this was actually approved in 2022, and then when I took over in January, we needed to go a different route, so we actually cut this position. And put that money towards something else, and then what we noticed when the Moab City Police Department was looking for some evidence, we have 3.5 evidence rooms. And they said, hey, do you have some of this evidence in one of your evidence rooms? We've been looking for it for over 50 years. I said, well, let's go look. And we actually found it, and they solved the homicide case, but we need our stuff to be organized and moved into one room, and we don't have any evidence techs right now.
But they, if we, like, once you kind of organize things, would it be an ongoing position?
Yes, yep. So every time a deputy brings in evidence, they put it into an evidence locker. So an evidence tech would go and grab that, categorize it, put it in the computer system. And then when a case is adjudicated from the courts, county attorney sends something over to my office that says, hey, you go ahead and destruct that evidence. And then that evidence tech is then gonna go find that evidence and then dispose of it properly. And like I said, we have thousands and thousands of pounds of narcotics that we need to get rid of. So.
Other questions for Sheriff Wiggins or comments? Okay. Steven, do you- Okay, great. All right, so this is one of the grant funded positions that we'll be talking about today. It is the fuels reduction coordinator with the weeds department. The weeds department was able to secure a 5-year grant, which will be funding this, if this position is approved, this position as well as a full-time year-round invasive species technician position. And so for the 5 years, our total cost would be the $5,452.96, which would again cover those payroll and workers' compensation costs. And the grant would be covering the salary as well as benefits of the position.
So this is almost an entirely grant funded position for 5 years.
Correct.
Wow.
Yes. I
Okay.
know, I'm
That's
very
pretty-
excited. with it.
Pretty nice.
Yes.
Izzy Weinhold is also very excited.
Right.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing grant that they were able to secure.
5,000 per year.
That is correct. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying.
And that's essentially admin costs, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's just the cost of us being able to have this.
Yes.
Exactly, and their workers' compensation insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And this invasive species technician, again, there was a clarifying conversation with myself and Izzy Weinhold earlier today where this position is actually also grant funded for that 5-year period. It isn't an additional, ask to her budget. And so, the payroll costs would be quite comparable, around $5,000 or $6,000 per year for those 5 years. And then, of course, we would be looking at either extended grant funding or absorbing those positions.
Wow, okay. So basically two paid additional workers in that department.
Yes, which would be
10 grand.
Right. Yeah.
pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
Yeah, and very needed as well. Oh, perfect. All right. And so this maintenance technician position is a request being put forth by the Old Spanish Trail Arena, and Angie Book, their director, is here, so she will be able to speak to the additional justifications. They are requesting an additional full-time maintenance tech position, and that is to be able to maintain the level of service that they already are required to offer out at Old Spanish Trail Arena, as well as to be able to accomplish several new projects that they have on the books for 2025. In addition, I know that they have definitely had an overtime budget for this year that went over what they were hoping, just out of necessity. If something breaks, it has to be fixed. It can't wait until next week when everybody's time cards start over. And so being able to have additional staffing to be able to get ahead of those types of just day-to-day, week-to-week items would be very, very helpful for their team. And then I'd love to pass it back to Angie if she would like to provide an extra justification for us.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you. You pretty much summed it up there, but OSTA's definitely growing and expanding, and the demands are coming down on us. So the request is just to add an additional staff person to our team to be able to keep up the demands that are coming with the growing.
So in this position, Angie, it's am I correct in figuring that there's two other maintenance techs that similarly that employed at OSTA right now?
There's three.
There's three total, so we'd be expanded from 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's basically the exact same position.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and the event calendar is filling extremely quickly. Usually we start picking up late March, early April, and we're already at the beginning of February as far as being.
I mean, I don't think you really need to judge. Sure, Mike feels the same way. It's like,
Yeah.
there's places within OSTA that have never been used, or outsider, things are just, it's, I see it, I drive by it every day.
Yeah.
It's just exploding.
We're still going, and especially with the stage and the county
Right.
fair, and I could keep going on. You guys know, you hear it, you
Right,
see it,
right.
you see our time cards.
Yeah.
I definitely see the need more. I want to know. I'm doing my best to make it busier out there every time. Are we offsetting any of this cost of a new position with being busier? Are we bringing in more?
As far as events,
Or
Is
just
that-
offsetting your budget?
You're talking money, Mike.
Yeah,
it's never gonna be a money maker.
Okay.
But the money's coming, people are paying the fees, yes, and you're definitely gonna see a huge change in the fee schedule this year for OSTA.
Okay.
So I expect to see a lot of line changes there.
I really like, actually, to the point of love, more going on out there, including my own stuff and what I participate in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Bill, looks like you have a question.
And maybe not as much a question, but Angie and I have talked about this quite a bit, and I know that I continue to load both Gabe and Steve up regularly, but I see a need moving forward in the future, and I've discussed this with Angie. When we have an event out there, what that event costs the county to hold it, and what does that event pay the county to participate? And I think that requires some help from Steve to put together a very simple thing that they can start tracking these. Not that I want to do away with anything, but I would like to, if we have an event out there that's costing us $50,000 and charging them $5,000 to use our facility, then I think we need to look at that. And so maybe that's already in place a little bit somewhere. It's just that I don't have access to it. And I think OSHA, like she said, we're never gonna be in the black maybe, but we certainly ought to be aware if we have issues, whether it's the pickleball courts or the archery or the powwow or whatever, which event is it? And how much do we really want to continue subsidizing, or do we want to lift up there?
And that, to piggyback off Bill there, I mean, that doesn't, we all know that that doesn't go to just OSTA grants. There's gotta be, it would really help to have a little more rounded ROI on if what we have, return on investment. I know you guys know that, in case the public doesn't. Of some of these events that we do put money towards, or facilities towards, or the stage, or.
Kevin?
I just wanted to second what Bill said, that I think it's important to understand how much work it's costing the county.
Yeah.
Right side is great, side, some changes.
As the new finance officer, once I get this budget done, I have a keen interest next year to look at both the airport and OSTA, right? Helping to develop business plans, just to exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have you on board for a full year, Steve. Oh, yeah, it's already 3:10, so I think we should keep cruising.
Great, thank you. All right, this operations coordinator position is the one that is being rescinded, so we're gonna go ahead and move
Okay.
it past.
Great. Well, just out of curiosity, was that asked for because there was more oversight needed with the two positions that potentially would be added with the grant positions, or?
That's a great question. Essentially being able to have somebody fully dedicated to field operations would just be able to increase both institutional knowledge, of course, and just being able to support those that are out in the field seasonally, as well as be able to lift off some of those field operations
Great.
obligations on Izzy so that she is able to do more administrative work, try to secure additional grant funding, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that was the
Okay.
point
That's,
behind it. As she thought about it, she indicated that she would like to focus on some other things, and then we may see this request again next year.
okay, that's great. Yeah, and appreciate Izzy for coming to that conclusion.
Yep, for being mindful, absolutely. And then our last new position proposal is the systems administrator position with our IT department. IT currently has a staff of 2 full-time individuals, and they're servicing all of Grand County. So that, disproportionate amount is really impacting in terms of they would be able to be much more timely as well as much more efficient if they were able to be more fully staffed.
Didn't we originally discuss this at a part-time position, and then we realized that Debbie also is looking for some part-time help, and some of that was GIS related, and or did we, am I missing something?
I thought that there was Matt, not this position, but he also talked about a GIS specific position that was part-time, and right, Debbie was also, so.
So
Yeah, I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
It was separate. Okay. But there's an opportunity here that if there's a new IT specialist coming in, they could be picking up some GIS stuff as well.
Yeah.
Questions on this proposal?
Looks like not.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I went ahead and calculated, and again, these numbers are now not accurate in that the invasive species technician will not hit the general fund at $87,000. It will be less than $10,000. And additionally, we will not have an operations coordinator proposal, so we can go ahead and slash this by over $100,000. So it would be the full hit would be less than $600,000. Yes.
And I just wanted, and so our next step is to put together some kind of spreadsheet that we can do some scoring and then at a future meeting decide.
Yeah,
how
you
far
guys-
down the list.
Just for modification, do you guys remember, did Mallory put that together or did Renee?
It might,
Did
I
Mallory-
kind of remember Mallory also. She might have done it in collaboration with Renee, but I think it came from Mallory.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true.
but it's that.
But I mean,
I'm like, you-
my ask on that, I do
Yes,
think that
okay, great.
scoring is,
We've already talked
Okay,
about doing
awesome.
it in my department.
yeah,
great.
scoring's better than ranking. I think it just, you
Yeah.
should assign a number, 0 to 5 or something like that, fractions allowed and
Yeah.
just add up the scores. I think that makes a lot more sense than entering 1 through 7 or something. Right?
Yeah.
I remember Mallory complaining about somebody using decimals in their ranking system last year.
That was me. I'm
Might
totally
be true.
joking.
And I would say decimals are fine. I completely understand. There's a significant difference between 4.5 and 5, right? So, but yeah, we'll say decimals are allowed, but I'll be able to generate that and then get it out. to all of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then again, I do want to be very considerate of time and try to move through this in the next 9 minutes. So we are, there is a position reclassification proposal for the active transportation and trails director to move from a grade 14 to a grade 16. The total fiscal impact of this would be about $10,500. The reason for this is that the last time the position was evaluated for a grade was in 2021. The position's duties, responsibilities, as well as the sheer number of staff that the position now supervises has increased quite substantially in the last 3-4 years. And I'm trying to keep myself concise, so please feel free to ask questions. All right, go ahead and move on. This next position reclassification is for the commission coordinator position from a grade 14 to a grade 16. This is contingent on us both reclassifying the deputy clerk and auditor position, as well as the current plan is to reallocate special events coordination duties to the commission coordinator as well as the deputy clerk auditor, and then let go of that special events manager position. And so essentially I allocated half of doing away with that position to each. And so with this increase, we would still be saving about $23,000 just on this position if we elected to do that.
I will note, I've spoken to Stephen about this a little bit, and this will probably require us to rewrite the job description and kind of like who it reports to, and there's some things we'll need to negotiate between the clerk's office and the county commission. I think it's doable.
Guess my question would be along the lines of if we're removing a position and reclassifying or adding to 2 other individuals who are already full-time positions, how do they have the time available to take on half time in their current jobs? To me, that doesn't make sense. So somebody is either underutilized and has half of their time available, or how's that work out? I guess I'm struggling with this one.
I think I can answer that. And that's because with the implementation of the software in the beginning, if you remember when we had the whole special events ordinance that came up, and getting that up and running took a lot of kind of hours of dedication to get that going, and it's actually going quite smoothly now. So I think we've streamlined the whole process. And so I think that it could be an additional 4 to 6, maybe 8 hours a week is all that this would really add to those other 2 people. And I think that it now with the software that we have in place and with the systems that we have in place, it's become a lot smoother. So I think that job has streamlined considerably to where it can be done. I think we have some capacity to take that on.
There's a lot of recurring events, right, that now are familiar with the current system in place, and so doing that year after year.
Yeah, special events was something that I mean, literally, it felt like we had a special events agenda item changing some aspect of that position and how we do things on every other, once a month we'd have something going on. But it does seem like in the last year, we've really gotten it under control, and I think it's been pretty non-controversial and just, yeah.
I will say that Gabe and I both talked to the staff that are involved, and we both feel like there's some capacity there to take that on.
And yeah, I think with this too, I think I thank you guys for thinking outside the box and seeing if we can save some money on a position like this in the long run too.
Thank you. The next reclassification is, again, directly tied to what we just discussed. So we would be reclassifying the deputy clerk slash auditor and grants coordinator from a grade 10 to a grade 11 to account for some of those job duties that would be reallocated from the special events manager position to their position. And the fiscal impact subtracted by approximately half of that salary that would no longer be paid out would be approximately $31,844.
I should mention too, that the special events coordinator position is funded, is or was funded by TRT promotion funds. So this is a savings in the general fund, but it is definitely a savings and a significant efficiency. So it's
Does that mean then that these salaries after the reclassification are gonna have no funding from the TRT promotion fund?
we'll figure out a split then if I need to consult on, all the appropriate authorities on the matter with regards to what is the appropriate way to handle that.
Okay, but all the savings are going to be TRT promotion budget. So, and all the, okay.
Thank you. All right, the next reclassification is from the Grant Center. They have a facility maintenance worker position that they are requesting to reclassify to a technician. That is because looking at the needs of their facility as well as the skill set of one current employee, they feel that the Grant Center currently offers a level of service that they do in fact need a technician position indefinitely moving forward. So that reclassification would be from a grade 7 to a grade 8 with a fiscal impact of $3,842. This next position reclassification is out of the Personnel Services Department. It is to reclassify the Personnel Services Coordinator position to the Assistant Personnel Services Director. This is actually an item that has been in the works for quite a long time. Before I came on board, actually, this was something that had been discussed, and I know that Renee Baker was very supportive of it. The Personnel Services Coordinator currently is in effect working as an assistant director during the approximate 5 months that my position was vacant. She was the interim personnel services director. And within that, just the sheer amount of both institutional knowledge as well as the level of support that has to come out of the personnel services department as a department of 3 serving the whole county. I think certainly supports a reclassification of that position.
I don't disagree that that young lady took on a huge load and filled in the spot there, but I guess I'm looking a little bit further out the picture, and it hasn't been that long ago that one person handled that department, and now we're up to 3, and I'm just a little bit
It was
curious.
the third, I think, is the payroll director, right? I believe we've always had the payroll. So I think it was
Payroll coordinator.
two people. I
2
believe.
people, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. And then our final reclassification request is for our planner 1 position in the planning and zoning department. The planner 1 position has absorbed a number of duties and responsibilities, including some assisting with economic development and then some other duties out of the planning and zoning office. And so the request is to reclassify it from a grade 10 to a grade 11 with a fiscal impact of $4,100. So just looking at the position reclassifications, and again, these numbers are not necessarily, these are not reflective of what it would look like in the general fund because of this discussion of the special events manager position coming out of TRT. So just as a very blanket statement, the increases in total would be about 60,000, whereas the offset of being able to have a position absorbed into 2 current full-time positions would be about 70,000.
And that 70,000 would be entirely be from TRT promotional.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
The general fund would still be a 60,000.
The general
Yeah,
fund
okay.
would still be that 60 or 59,478
Okay.
roughly.
Great. That's it.
Thank you, Stephen.
This is like the second or third one of these that are not in the packet. This page is that.
Yes, and that was because the draft of this presentation, which I had revised after feedback from the Budget Advisory Board. Essentially, this is the initial draft version, whereas this was the second version. So I apologize. This is in Civic Clerk. It has been uploaded. It is available online. And I can certainly, send this presentation directly to folks as well as you would like, but it is available to the public. Thank you. All right. If you all need me, you know where to find me, I would imagine. But thank you very much for your time. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to me and I'm happy to get you information. And I've got my action items list for after.
Thanks, Tess.
Thank you all.
Our next topic, actually, I want to pull up, something that I brought up to begin with here, so we may have even improved this a little bit. We had, 10 new positions. Oh, no, that's about right, 605, oh, okay, that's about right, and.
It was just the one position, right, that we're removing?
Yeah, so this number, this 908 salaries and position, that'll probably already go down, because this came from an earlier version, so we're already should do that, but I'll keep that up to date as we move along here. Okay. Let's go down to tax charts and fund balances. Actually, let me start with fund balance because it's a simple little chart.
So we're not gonna do the elected official salaries.
Oh, I'm
till
sorry.
later.
No, I'm sorry, you're right. Chris, let's go. Do you want me to open up, I have. Sure. Which one? The narrative, summary?
Summary's good.
Okay.
Thank you. So the reason that we're talking about elected official salaries, is because, as is mentioned in the packet, elected official salaries are set by the commission every year and, they don't receive any of the merit or longevity increases that other employees are eligible for either, every other year or every year, depending on if they're in the pay for performance, program. And so every few years, the county generally takes a look at elected official salaries, to see where they're at. And I also want to start by saying this isn't a request from myself or from the other elected officials to make an adjustment or to advocate for any of the options that have been listed here, but I think it is a request to the commission just to take a look at the salaries, take a look at where they are compared to each other, compared to the rest of the county and to other counties. Because elected official salaries aren't adjusted through the normal processes that other employees are. And there've been a number of different ways that, I guess in the interest of time, I won't go through all of the information that's in the packet, because it's there for you to take a look at, but the various ways that the elected official salaries have been compared to other elected officials throughout the state has changed over the years. There was especially a pretty major change for the attorney a few years ago, where the average that was used for them was different than the average that was used for all the other elected officials. As mentioned in here, the sheriff has been receiving increases to keep their salary above other department employees in the sheriff's department. And so that has resulted in a larger gap between the attorney's salary and the sheriff's salary compared to the other elected officials. And when I say a bigger gap, I mean a bigger gap than you would see in other counties.
And yeah, I'm here to answer any questions. And I volunteered to do the analysis on this, and I have done it in years past, so that's why I'm the one here. I just crunched the numbers. So, but I did send this out to all the other elected officials and incorporated any feedback that they did give to me.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I read through the materials and it's well presented. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks. I had several feedback, comments. First, thanks for putting it together. It was very clear. I guess, I get, yes, you offer a number of different ways of looking at this, like comparing to the sheriff's stats, salary, looking at ratios between different elected officials, looking at the top deputy, and so on. And some of those I think are not persuasive to me. To me, it seems like the straightforward thing is to compare with other counties, the assessor in this county versus assessor in other counties. I do think often in the past, we've just taken and this isn't just elected officials, but other positions, we've just taken like a crude average. We just take every local government we can find and average them all together. And some of those are Salt Lake City and some of them are Daggett County. And just the weighting there doesn't make sense. And I think what would make more sense is to sort of compare how the salaries depend on the population of the county, maybe the logarithm of the population of the county. And then you might see some trends and where we ought to fit on that. And of course we can, I know for some of these positions, Grand County is atypical because of our high level of tourism. And maybe we should treat ourselves as if our population was 20 or 30,000 instead of just 10,000. So that part seems good. I guess I'm not persuaded by the comparison of the county attorney's salary. As some of you remember, I didn't think that we really went through a good process to do that, and so I would hate to see the bad logic from a couple of years ago be replicated to throughout all the elected officials. So and in any case, this is as much an argument for lowering the sheriff and county attorney salaries as it is for raising the others. So that one personally, I wouldn't want to look at it that way. Similarly, I think the comparison to the top deputy it would make sense if these weren't elected officials, then of course you want to have, that kind of hierarchy there. But, if you're an elected official and especially a minor elected official who usually doesn't even have an opponent when you're running for re-election, that's a lot of job security. You can't be fired. You get to, you have a lot of autonomy, and if the salary ends up being lower than the top deputy, then so be it. I think. So I don't think that's a good way to look at that, and I wouldn't want to say every time that we raise the deputy sheriff's salary, we have to automatically raise the sheriff's. Or I don't mean to pick on the sheriff, for any elected official. And then a final comment is I do think you've identified a problem, which is that most of our positions, the ones that aren't elected, we do give merit increases, we give sort of longevity increases, and the salary goes up. And that's very awkward with elected officials because I think, Chris, you're doing an awesome job as treasurer. You deserve to be well compensated for your good work. But in a few years, you can be replaced by someone who's a complete novice. And I've heard various, some people have claimed that we're not even allowed to reduce elected official salaries. I don't think that's actually true, but it's certainly awkward to do that. And for that reason, it is a tough situation. It's just, taking elected official salaries and making them fluctuate a lot. That's hard. Making them just always go up and never go down. That's, regardless of the experience of the elected official position, that's not good. I think in some of these positions, the best thing would be to eliminate as an elected official and have it be someone appointed. The surveyor and maybe recorder come to mind. Those are positions that are pretty straightforward. I don't see why they need to be elected, and I do think we have the freedom within our form of government to specify who the elected officials are. that's not specified in state code, so we can change that later. And then the last comment is on that is, you know, there are municipalities throughout the state, some of them much bigger than us, some of them much smaller. And in municipalities, you know, the comparable positions are appointed, so that, you know, so we've got lots of examples of local governments where you appoint rather than elect your assessor or treasurer and things like that, and financial officer, and it seems to work fine, so, sorry. Sorry to talk so long.
No,
but I tried to make it
that's a
efficient.
good point.
I think that anytime an elected official suggesting cutting another elected official's position or pay, hopefully it's in the position of a lame duck on their way out. So I don't agree with that analogy, and I don't think that we should be looking at it that way. But what I do think, and would help me, Chris, is if we were looking at this by the status of our county, which would then compare it with other counties, because the ones that you use, both Washington County, Summit, Davis, Salt Lake City, are all huge. And so if we're comparing 10,000, and even if we double it, as Kevin says, because of the tourism, I totally understand that, but not tenfold, right? I mean, we have to realize that some of the benefit of living in Grand County is because we want to be here. If we want to make the big bucks, let's go to Park City or Salt Lake City and put up with what those folks put up with in those environments, because part of everybody's reason for being in Grand County is because, well, some of us want to be here, maybe some don't, but I think that we need to be looking closer to the reality of what the counties are, or at least I would like to, and then maybe we make decisions, because I agree that if this system doesn't work the way we have it, because I don't know how many years you've been here, way more than me. And you deserve to be compensated for the work that you're doing, as Gabe and Steve and everybody here. I mean, they deserve to be compensated fairly for the work they're doing. So I just think that it needs to be a little different analogy for me to understand it.
Yeah, and to be clear, the average of the Kane, Summit, Washington, Davis, and Salt Lake are only there because that was the average that was used to set the attorney's salary.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine.
Responding a little bit to what Bill said, I do want, I mean, I think in my initial comments, I just assumed there was no practical way for us to have elected official salaries kind of go up and down as the elected officials change. We have an experienced treasurer with a good track record, and maybe we want to give him a lot of money. And then if he decides not to run re-election and we have, you know, someone completely new, should they automatically get, you know, the salary that, you know, Chris justified? And I just wonder, maybe something you could research is there a way that we could have, you know, maybe we just have a base salary and some kind of, we're allowed to give elected officials bonuses?
There's gotta be some kind
Merit,
of step.
right.
You've been here 10 years or 15 or whatever.
That is interesting. You'd think there could be a mechanism for that. I haven't heard of one.
Yeah. Yeah,
But I will tell you that if you look at the data tab and look at the other counties, there's a whole lot of them that keep their assessor, treasurer, recorder, and clerk auditor at exactly the same salary. And I think part of that is that other commissions probably don't want to get involved in deciding, you know,
Like that's
who's doing a better job amongst the elected officials, partly because they don't have any control over who that person is. And so the average of all counties except the 6th class, which is on the list here, that's the average that we used during the last salary survey. And the last time that elected official salaries were adjusted outside of the COLA, apart from the attorney. And that's why that was.
So My question would be then, are we suggesting, let's just use the recorder, not that I'm picking on the recorder, but currently they're at 101 and we're suggesting if we use this analogy, they would then be bumped to 118,097. Is that, am I looking at that correct?
That's using the 139% of their chief deputy. That's what you're looking at. That metric.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And I agree with Kevin that using the chief deputy as a metric, I believe there are some counties that might do that, but that runs into problems as well, because if the chief deputy retires and they bring in a new person who's at a lower step, then that changes everything right there. So that was really there again as a comparison.
Or you could have a chief deputy with 30 years of experience and get a new elected in who has absolutely none. And
Yeah, and again, the entire idea with this is to bring it up, to put it before the commission, so you have an idea
Right,
of where
yeah.
we're at and why these are here.
One detail that's hard to capture in this analysis without too many asterisks and things is that this factors in. for auditors, that
Yeah.
it's Factor in verifying how the staff. That's. So, the idea that the salaries amongst these elected offices set on the same level, I think, applies to Congress repairs and clerk. It's sort of, that's what I'm arguing.
Right.
I thought your email did a good job of explaining that today too. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also think that's definitely something we should take into
yeah,
account.
I agree for sure. It's added responsibility without a doubt.
There's also some counties that have a recorder and treasurer that's combined, but in the spreadsheet that they're listed as the same salary for averaging.
Okay.
So
Great.
So then I'm still confused. Are we looking at moving this to which line or?
That's part of the discussion, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all on the table.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's all for our consideration. Any further discussion on this one? Kevin, you look,
I have more to say, but we're running out of time, so yeah.
maybe an email with your further thoughts would be helpful.
Yeah, if you want to see other averages or different ways to parse the data, I can do my best.
Yeah, I guess the thing that seems most promising to me, leaving aside the clerk auditor issue, is that, make some kind of graph about how salary, we actually did this when we were discussing attorney salaries a few years ago, and see how the size of the county relates to the graph, the Grand County size, see where we fall on that curve. I mean, it's messy, there'll be scattered points, but let's kind of see a trend. And then, we need to decide, do we want to, it's Grand County and Emery County have almost exactly the same population, but I think, our local government has to do a lot more work than Emery County does because of the tourism. And so we might want to count ourselves as having a population of 20 or 30,000. We can have that discussion
Yeah, that sounds good.
and then just try to fit ourselves on that curve.
Yeah.
So that,
I think
it's
another,
carbon, it's twice.
I think another consideration is the cost of living in that particular county. I think places, even small places with very high cost of living generally pay higher too. Also makes it more complicated. Okay.
Let's keep this on our budget finalization checklist here.
Thank you.
Use that.
All right.
All right, two more agenda items here.
Okay.
Fund balance and then revenue projection. Let me pull up fund balance too, because it's just really just a single page, just as an FYI to you all. So the fund balance year ending. With 24 being.
as usual, can you make that a little bigger? I don't, or is this in the packet?
I think so.
It is in the packet. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It always looks bigger on your screen.
Yeah, I know. That's why I use the screen. I hope that this actually helps it project here, but anyway, I'll just let, I don't plan to go over any of this, but other than to note that the general fund balance has been increasing every year. There is $2.6 million available in the fund balance. So that's an option rather than cutting 2 million out of our budget. There's always the option of some kind of balancing of cost reductions versus, a transfer of funds, but this is all.
I forget, so the last couple of years, have we had a budget line item that increases the general fund, or does that just happen because we've had surplus at the end of the?
In the fund balance.
Yes, fund balance rather.
Yeah, in the end of year amendment, we usually always include a contribution to the fund balance because it
Based,
always has to be net zero. at
Okay.
the end, what we finalize.
in other words, we've done a really good job of budgeting and we've had surplus.
Well, we've also received some very generous federal
Yeah,
grants.
Right, especially with the COVID money, ARPA money, whatever.
What is the standard for how much you should keep in your
That's what I
fund
was gonna
balance?
ask.
What's your, is there a formula or a standard so that we know where we need, this is the right amount to say,
Right.
keep it safe, I
Yeah.
know for.
I'm not aware of any standard that applies to all the different counties, but there is a statutory limit, and I would kind of defer to Gabe. Do you remember, is it 65% of your operating balance or your operating 1 year
Okay,
operating fund? I'd have to look it up, but there is a state code that says you can't have more than X
right.
as a percentage of your operating fund.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that was kind of my question, Mary. Like, it would seem like you would want to have, whatever it is, what percent of your operating budget you'd want to have that in the coffers. Okay,
So we are card-carrying members of the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, and that we can definitely look into that resource to see if
That'd be
there is a
great.
guideline.
Okay, that'd be great.
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, it would
because,
be
like, the person who, is an avid saver. I understand it. I think it's more comfortable to have a good savings account. But at the same time, I don't think we need to have a savings account that, saves so much that we're lowering our product that we're giving to the community, So I would like some more information on that to help us decide, do we take some of that money out to not have to cut so much?
Can we follow up with that? So this is just kind of in our packet as data for our reference.
Yeah, I just had one other, comment on Quinn's discussion of the limit on how much we can meet in the fund balance. But we can take money out of the fund balance and put it into a capital fund. And there's no limit on that, and we can also take it from the capital fund and put it back into the fund balance. If we need to. So that cap, there's kind of a very easy workaround.
I do believe
And I think it also, if I'm reading this correct, Stephen, we've got $7 million in capital funds, so it's
Yeah.
really,
Yeah,
we're like 17
yeah.
million that is sort of, cash that we can spend without a whole lot of restrictions. That's that. Maybe we want to spend most of it on capital funds, but
I had a really quick question on Fund 30, the UMTRA fund. What, is that the fund that we fund Jessica's position with?
No,
It's not.
That's funded by the DOE.
But don't they move the money into one of our funds and we pay her? Isn't that
Oh,
right?
that's possible.
But that is the.
It's not. Okay.
It's its own fund, its own fund.
It's its own fund. Okay.
I think it's what we've been using for lobbying.
It is. That's all right. That was my second question.
Yeah, that
So
was given to us years ago by the state.
it went
grant.
up. Was that from interest on the money or that's,
There is interest earned in that.
although I know we
Well,
probably
it's
spent a few
yeah,
$1,000s on our.
26, 29, 27, 29.
We've done some research recently on sort of getting more specific detail on when there was funding specifically earmarked for that lobbying effort. And there was information that we found as would be expected. It's not as though it's imagined.
Yeah.
About 2005, if I remember right, is when as it started before the project.
Yeah.
It was when the state said, yes, we want this pile moved. And it's going to take money from the federal government, therefore we're going to help you go and beg for it. So it had, and it wasn't used for a few years.
Anyway, I'm curious about that.
In what respect, like?
Oh, just,
is
yeah,
that
just,
continually available? Or
r-
that's
right, for the,
fund balance available to be used for that?
for that, and I know that we have been drawing down on that for the lobbying effort, but it seems to be growing or staying the same, more or less.
In the interest of time. I'd
Yeah,
like to
yeah,
move
for
on.
sure, Steve. Yeah,
There's two
please.
more agenda topics, but the,
Okay.
the most important one I want to talk about is the revenue
Yeah,
forecast.
yeah, I'm sorry.
So let me tee this up by saying that, let me tee this up by saying that I had to establish some kind of position. Or it was my intent to establish a position rather than say, what do you guys think? Right, so I established this recommendation and it's for our discussion. This doesn't represent the right answer. This is my view. And as I started this conversation, Kevin and I have had some spirited conversations about this. It's just an interesting topic. I've already started by saying, if you look back year over year, we got like a point growth. If you look back 7 years, that's 20 points growth. If you look back 3 years, it's -1% growth. It's a horizon of your time. Your charts are always going up and down, right? So at what point do you take? I took what I believe is probably the most pessimistic. I don't know. If we did some what if, we could probably find some other point in there where it looks, worse. But so let me describe the methodology here. This is 3 years of moving averages. So every bar here, we're looking at the TRT chart. Every bar is 12 months backwards from this month. So January 2022 is 12 months moving forward. Ending on January 2022. So the blue bars are the revenue, tax revenue received. The orange bar is the change month over month. So I'm going to say that the orange bar is probably not so important in our discussion right now, but the blue bars are just the 12-month moving total through the life. And then what I did down here, I took two examples, just 1 year, 24 over 23 to get an average. Then I took 24 as a growth, as a movement away from the 3-year average. All right, so I don't want to get anybody lost in the weeds here, but I do have a method, and it could be argued what if the method is right. But so I'm basically looking at 3 years and taking 2 looks at that, a 1-year look and then a look against 3-year average. Then I took that number, and took an average of it. All right, so let me just present this. And then we can decide if we feel like we need to do some further analysis or pick a different time horizon, shorter than longer. I can go back and do the math. And actually, Kevin and I have had a great, you do the math, I do the math, let's come together and figure this out. But TRT, using this methodology, presently, I'm showing a 1.9% growth if I was using my crystal ball for 25. Actually, let me pause since I just described it before I go. Any questions about what I'm trying to present here?
You just said 1.9% growth, right?
You meant-
No, -1.9%.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, you did say growth.
So, well, growth.
Yeah.
Let me say that the factor is -1.9.
Yeah,
So we
right.
subtracted 25. Okay, so that's TRT. Let's go through it and then maybe we can come back to some questions. That's TRT. Restaurant, positive 8.4. I said, how does that happen? I thought, well, maybe more tourists, when people stop at restaurants, not everybody stops at hotels. Or maybe there's an inflationary thing here where the cost of food, there are restaurants going up more than a hotel. I don't know. I'm not trying to describe it, but
I think the restaurant tax really underperformed relative to TRT for a while. Now it's beginning to recover. So
Yeah.
that's why you're seeing that growth is just sort of getting back to.
It's because Mike recently opened up a restaurant.
Yeah,
yeah.
add to that pile there.
Yeah, and actually what's important here, I've already said it too, these numbers are already embedded in our tentative budget. And so if we change it, then it might change, but anyway, so our budget that we're looking at is using pessimistic numbers. All right, 8.4 per restaurant. Sales and the county option tax. The reason I bundled these together is because they're all going to the same budget account. Kevin had said, why did you put those two together? And I said, well, because they're both going into the general fund. And so I just combined them, even though the tax themselves aren't the same. But all right, 1.7% growth. Hospital revenue, 1.1% growth. All of these other transit related, the county highway, public transit, off-road vehicle, minus 8.7. And then there was one other thing that Kevin did bring up. I'm even estimating November and December of 2024. So my estimate there is also a little bit pessimistic, so I might be double dosing on pessimism. So if our actual numbers for November and December come up, then so I'm also estimating last 2 months of this year, just to be able to estimate 2025. But then all taxes together, you know, that's where I get the minus 0.9% or basically 1%, negative. All right, so that's what I presented. I mean, this was my recommendation as the finance officer. I wanted to say, hey, I think this is right, but now I'm open for any conversations. I'm not wedded to these numbers, but we do have to pick a projection for next year.
Kevin?
Yes, I'll just repeat what we discussed earlier. I think in using, the time horizon you're using here, as you pointed out, is sort of the most pessimistic choice. And if we chose something that was either longer or shorter, we would get more optimistic numbers. So to me, I think the next year is going to correlate most strongly with, this year and the previous year. And so it makes sense to use a time horizon that's not much more than 2 years. I think that's also similar to the way we've done it in the past. We just looked at the percentage growth from last year. That was, before COVID, that was a good predictor of what it was going to be next year. So I would be interested in seeing how this comes out if we were to use the 2-year or not much more than 2-year time horizon. And I do think we should find a way to do the calculation that doesn't involve making these extra estimates for November, December. I think just using these 12-month rolling things like you do. We can come up with something.
Well,
So
I'd
I would be,
I'd like to hear from everyone, but I absolutely can crunch those numbers and just put it out as a version of this. But I've got that 2-year horizon and take out the November, December estimates.
If I remember right, last year we had 3 different options based on an optimistic, a flat, and a pessimistic scenario, and we ended up choosing I think just the flat scenario. We did.
We did do that.
but those were I think Cody did those estimates.
Right, that's right.
I think they were less sophisticated than what Steve was doing. And they had pretty wide, so.
Right.
I mean, I'm, in general comfortable with the way Steve's doing things, but to me, it doesn't make sense of all the time horizons we could choose, choose the one that comes with the least. I would just most of these taxes, if you just look at the past 12 months versus the previous 12 months, they're all positive. So if that's true, then why would we be forecasting negative growth when none of our taxes are actually going down?
Yeah, right. That makes sense. I mean, having run businesses, I rarely looked more than a couple years in the past when I was predicting anything.
But I will, just to explain why I chose 3 years. So we had the trough at COVID and we had the major
boom at 21,
and then it leveled at 2022. So I just said, we're started to level out. I just picked that. So I just picked 3 years.
I agree.
Yeah, but I think the leveling off is really, because those 22 numbers are a comparison to 21.
Yeah, 22, using my 12-month rolling or moving forecast to dig into that.
That's right.
All right.
Bill,
I'm supportive of his negative being somewhat pessimistic look at this. And if anything, if we do come out on the high side and we have more money than we have, we're all looking at trying to find money to put into flood mitigation and a couple other issues. So to just look at this and say, well, let's use a positive one rather than a negative one, which would allow us to grow government more. And we would then be picking and choosing more of these positions that a lot of people want. when I think we need to be holding flat because our revenue shows that we need to be holding flat and we need to be, if we come up with some money, I mean, flood mitigation, we're not gonna fix with $400,000. We're talking that we're gonna have to put like $5 million in an account. We're giving Dan Stent to a technician to help him. That's gonna take money, and so I'm fine looking at a positive growth if that positive income is going into something that we really need in this community right now, and that's flood mitigation. There are a couple other areas of high use that we need, but not just so that we can look at expanding government, because by going from a negative to a positive one isn't the reason to do that in my mind.
Trish?
I know this is gonna sound strange, but I agree with you, Bill.
Do
That's
So-
it.
Let me make sure I understand this. Do you recommend that we go with a more positive
No,
revenue
I
forecast?
recommend a pessimistic
Okay,
outlook.
good.
And then if we have that slush fund, then we have that slush fund, and
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Good. You're right. What number we put here is not gonna make it happen. This is
Right.
just our budget.
Yes.
And okay.
I follow along with both of them, and that's weird. But your 1% down is a good. I mean, it was recommended 0% last year. We followed that. Pretty much hit our projections there. I do feel, in my pessimism, I would go 2%, but 1% down is as best crystal ball as we're going to get right now, at least in my mind.
I have a quick question and then a comment is, now if I'm going back to the beginning of our workshop today, every year we've had money left over in our budget, correct? Every single year for quite a few years.
We can show up at our general fund as
The
growing.
general fund's
Yeah,
growing.
so to me, I kind of favor a flat because we've consistently been under budget, so having a flat, saying, well, it's just, it's not gonna improve, it's not gonna get any better, it's gonna stay approximately the same. So, because we have a strong general fund, we have a strong savings, I think flat we'd be able to provide some more of the needs that people are asking for. And at the same time, we'd probably still end up having some money to put into our general fund.
And I tend to echo Mary on that as well. It looks like last year we put a little over $500,000 into our general fund, and we also put $1 million into our capital projects.
Yeah, so it makes.
Yeah.
It being austere is a good idea, but not so austere that we're cutting where we don't need to cut. Well, just improving. I mean,
Yeah.
Nobody's suggesting that we take.
okay,
away
I
position.
Go ahead, Evan. Everyone's had a chance to speak, but yourself.
I think that what's most useful is to come up with the most accurate projections. And I think the closer to the truth we can get is gonna do us the most favors. I think by, knowing that we consistently have underspent the whole time I've been here, and I think that even the 800,000 in the summary is conservative. I think we underspent a lot more than that. I think that, projecting as close to reality as we can does us the most favors. And so I think strategically aiming for like an overly pessimistic mark doesn't really do us favors for forecasting. I think we're trying to look into the crystal ball. And so rather than like aiming off the mark intentionally, I think the closer we can look into the crystal ball and find the truth, the better we're gonna be.
Well, I will clarify, this happened to be the most pessimistic, but it wasn't my intent. I just picked 2022 forward because it was flat. It just happened.
Yeah, I think
that it was.
like Jacques said, in years past, we've kind of had a few different scenarios played out, kind of laid out, and I think it would be beneficial to me too, when we're considering things like COLAs and sheriff retention and recruitment. I think that you know, there's a lot of staff issues that directly play to services for citizens that we're really kind of debating. So I think that the closer to reality that we can get with that, you know, when we see different scenarios laid out in front of us where it's like, oh, well, if it wasn't 0%, not negative 0.9, that would put the budget here. If it was at, you know, positive 0.4%, you know, that would put the budget here. And then what does that mean for all these other things?
Well, in the interest of time.
Yes.
This will be option A. I'm gonna do option B with the 2-year horizon, because Kevin and I have already looked at that. It does look a little better, but let me just present them both, and both are based on reality. These are real numbers. This is just math here.
Right.
So let me present what Kevin has suggested, a 2-year outlook, excluding my November, December 24 swag, because I was even crystal ball for that. And just represent you with option A and option B. And I think those are both based on reality, and I think solid estimates, and then we can.
That sounds great, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and to be clear too, I think it's really important to establish this much sooner than later, because it gives us kind of our baseline guide to all the other hard work that we're gonna need to do to balance the budget. So I'm wondering even if we can't present that, you know, we talked before about for new positions, presenting a survey. And I'm almost thinking that we should present a survey with information, and of course, we would want to discuss it in an open public meeting. The results of the survey and just, and sort of make sure to air that out as is appropriate. But I think we need to start kind of getting some of the known variables in place so that we actually know what we're going up against here.
Yeah.
So I think by the end of this week, we should get some surveys
That'd be great.
for you all.
I'll submit an email with just this.
That'd be great.
And I just want to clarify, I made a mistake when I used the word cut, because we aren't, what I was referring to is more not giving some of the requests that have been given. That's what I meant, not cutting,
Approving.
you know, because cutting some of the requests.
All right.
And I'm gonna make reference to it in my reports, but I hope that we can schedule a budget workshop next week. We'll have to meet as the Board of Canvassers. So I think it'll be convenient to pair those two meetings together. So we'll stay tuned on that.
We don't know a date for the canvas yet.
It has to happen between 7 and 14 days of the election, so latter part of next week is kind of what I'm thinking. So we'll have to come up with that quick, obviously.
Next week.
But there was one other agenda topic, which
Right.
was expenses greater than $1,000, but it's a pretty long list.
Okay.
I think I don't even want to start that at this
Right.
point.
Right. No, that's good. That's great. Okay.
This
Well,
has been a good workshop.
It's been a great workshop. Yeah, definitely appreciate your, yeah.
Very clear.
All right. So I will now adjourn this special workshop of the Grand County Commission. It's 4:08. Yeah, let's recess for 5 minutes, and when we return, we will get into our Grand County Commission as Land Use Appeal Authority, and in that capacity, on a motion to intervene. You about ready? Okay. Oh, yeah, Mary's. When am I good to go? Yeah, still, okay. Right. Okay, it's now 4:16 on November 6th, and I will I won't open the Grand County Commission meeting yet, as we have other business right now. So I will convene the Grand County Commission as the Land Use Appeal Authority on this motion to intervene, and I'm going to turn this matter over to our County Attorney, Stephen Stocks.
Commissioners, as you have likely seen, we've received a zoning request, and then we've had interpretation on that. We set out a briefing schedule with the Cane Creek Development Watch. Following that, we received documentations from the developers asking for a motion to intervene and a motion to dismiss. Now, in consultation with Bart, we've talked about those options and talked about what the commission can do. And we don't believe that it's necessary or required to immediately handle their motion to dismiss. So what we're suggesting is allowing them to intervene. The reason why we suggest allowing them to do the motion to intervene is because there's a possibility that their property rights are at stake. If we don't allow them the opportunity to intervene, then they will have exhausted their administrative their attempts at administrative efforts to attempt to be heard on this issue, and it could result in some potential adverse consequence or action if we don't allow them to, at a minimum, intervene and have basically their statement, their argument. So Bart and I both looked at it and believe that it's likely appropriate to allow them to intervene, allow them to provide documents. It doesn't seem inappropriate. We did provide the documents to them. Commissioner Walker helped encourage that and help push that along. And so we've given them the documents that the watch has provided. Planning and zoning also has those documents. So I think it's likely in the commission's best interest to allow all parties to present the information to the commission and the commission to make the decision from there. And so the decision for tonight is merely granting the motion to intervene that would allow them to be a part of this process. Now, what we've looked at is we believe that the party that would likely be that would have the biggest risk of being disadvantaged would be the watch. And so if the watch wanted to suggest or to do a different schedule for the briefing, because of how it's starting, they're the petitioners, they're going to do the first brief, which they've already provided to the commission. Then there's a reply brief period, and then their response. If we allow the intervene to go forward, or the intervention to go forward, they would be able to reply in that time period, and then maybe the watch would want additional time on the back end to be able to respond to the comments made by the interveners. But likely the comments made by the interveners have already been made both in the motion to dismiss and their application to intervene. All that being said, we're trying to do this. We don't have a set rule book on how we're supposed to lay out all the rules for this entire process, and so that's why we've been trying to do this as open and transparent with the watch and with the other parties. So that's where we're at. I haven't received any indication. I know the watch, they've sent an email today resisting this request from the developers to intervene. But I think in an abundance of caution, allowing them to proceed forward with the motion to intervene would be appropriate. It doesn't change the commission's ultimate ability to make a decision on this entire process. So hearing their position doesn't necessarily disadvantage the commission. So all that being said, that's what the only item tonight to discuss would be granting or denying their motion to intervene.
Do we do that via motion?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's cleanest. Again, we don't have in this entire process, it's not super clean. We don't have a set layout breakdown, but I think, in this capacity, you're acting as the appellate authority and
So is grant the right word? I would grant the motion to
intervene. Yep, but we're not moving to grant the motion to dismiss, of course. That's being held off and reserved, and then kind of in a judicial efficiency, you would hear all the information, and then you can make all decisions you want on all the applications and everything.
Okay, so I'll move to grant the motion to intervene.
Thanks, Kevin. Second on
I'll
that?
second that.
Trish, second. All right. Motion to grant from Commissioner Walker, second from Commissioner Hedin. So the understanding is that this would just enable the interveners, the KCPD to make comment on the same meeting date as
to be involved as a
Watch. Yes, yes.
similar akin to a party, very similar, but more formally. I can't recall if we had commissioners watching on other hearings. Sometimes we'll have people want to be heard on the issue and then they present like
Yeah.
any other participant, and it's different than just merely commenting. They'd be a party to the discussion.
So it kind of, it's more or less the same. It just kind of moves up the time frame and allows for a little bit more discussion in that first meeting. Previously, they were gonna have their presentation at the next meeting. right?
No. So they were just the briefing schedule.
Okay,
So previously, this was like a dispute between the county or
Right,
P
yeah.
and Z and Watch, and then the commission was acting as adjudicators. And so the property owners, weren't formally part of that process, so they could come to the public. And so this is just making them a formal part of it, which to me just makes really good sense.
okay. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Passes unanimously, 6 votes to nothing, and I don't think Mike's on yet, is he? Okay, so yeah, 6-0 with Commissioner McCurdy absent. All right, that's all the business we had on that front, so I will close that portion of the meeting. And I will now open our regular Grand County Commission meeting on November 6th. It is 4:22. Present are Commissioners Walker, Clapper, Winfield, Hadeen, McGann, and myself, Jacques Hadler. We also have our County Attorney Stephen Stocks, our County Chair Gabe Wojtek, and our County Administrator Quinn Hall. All rise for a Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we will move to our citizens to be heard session. It is our standard to start off with a citizens to be heard. If you are here to be heard in the chambers, please raise your hand. I'll call you, and you may come forward and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. And I will move between the chambers and Zoom. So if you are here in the chambers and would like to make comment, please raise your hand, and I'll call you forward. Anyone on Zoom who is here to make comment? If you're on Zoom, please use your raise your hand symbol or just unmute and you can begin speaking. Do you see anyone on there? Okay. All right, I'll give one more call in the chambers. Anyone here to be heard? Thank you. We'll have a second citizens be heard session at close to 6 o'clock. I am actually going to move forward our elected officials reports for our clerk is time constrained. So I'm going to allow him to present his report right now.
Thanks, Jacques. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure to get sort of information about a report regarding elections out as soon as possible here and just kind of get it up front here in the meeting. I know everyone's excited to hear last details or the latest details. And I'm also just pining to spend some quality time with my daughter at home tonight. So thanks for helping me do
Absolutely.
that. The election, the general election, the first presidential election I've had the honor of administering, went off greatly successfully. And I'd be remiss not to, first recognize my staff, namely my Chief Deputy Dana Van Horn and Deputies Crystal Santana and Jenny Beth Jones. We got Jana Kyle out of hibernation to come back in and help because she knows the ropes as far as elections go. I want to thank the sheriff's office for having deputies available here in the courthouse to give us that support. Attorney Stocks for continually checking in with me and offering his support as would be needed. And a very special thank you to Sabrina Sanders, our poll worker this year, volunteer, and she was quite a force, and we couldn't imagine having done it without her. And so one thing that that I'll just speak to right away is we might have noticed that the results were maybe they came in pretty late. We got them uploaded at about 1 a.m. And so the results we got to those results a little slower than we hoped or expected, and really that was in the interest of a methodical and very careful approach, whereby any unexpected delays or errors that would cause us more delays would arise. As has been in the case in the past where we are scanning ballots and somehow, a ballot didn't get scanned and put back in and ended up in the can. And then when we reconcile at the end of scanning a batch, all of a sudden our count is off by one and we got to start. And that whole hour that we spent feeding the machines has to be done over again. Things like that have happened, and we were really trying to avoid those every step of the way, and we were able to. And really, it was also in the interest of putting the voters first and reducing delays for them as they came to the polling place. And I don't think anyone waited longer than 5 or 10 minutes to be helped. And I think few would argue that quicker results reporting should be prioritized over, a positive experience for our voters at the polling place. So I think we really achieved that. And I'm really very happy and proud of the way it went, and turnout was fabulous, up over 90%. That's quite a testament to Grant County in general and the activity of our community. In general, it's like hard to not even I have to hold back almost from choking up about just the overall cooperation and tone in general throughout the whole last few days. There wasn't a tension, even given all the rhetoric that surrounds elections everywhere these days. It felt really to me like a community space and a community event, and that was really special that we didn't have that kind of tension that one might have expected, or that I had to be expected, that I had to be prepared for, in all honesty. So what a pleasant surprise, and I thank everyone for coming down and showing out in this way. So on to the numbers. So there's the official number of registered voters as of October 31st, 2024, and that's sort of the number that we use, and the Lieutenant Governor's office uses that kind of snapshot of active registered voters at that time. That's 5,872, and of course that's kind of a moving target every day as we sort of add mostly from that point adding to the list of because we are a state that offers same-day registration. So that number will swell a little bit as we go on, and Dana Van Horn, my chief deputy, is preparing, as is statutorily required, an updated ballot disposition report that will include the information that I'm presenting today, and that'll be available on the Grand County GrandCountyUtah.net/elections. And so that number is 5,872. The number of ballots that we counted yesterday on election day was 5,311. So that exact turnout number is actually 90.45%, to be exact. And again, that'll just kind of adjust as that number of registered voters is kind of sort of finalized, and there obviously are some more ballots to be counted. And so that's the next topic that I'm sure everyone's very interested in. And so at present, the number of ballots, the number of regular ballots to be cured, and that's almost exclusively in regards to signature verification that failed, that we are currently in the process and at least have made one attempt, if not in some cases multiple attempts at reaching voters to have them cure their signatures so that their votes can be counted. And they will have until 5 p.m. It would otherwise be Monday the 11th, but that's a holiday, so it'll be Tuesday the 12th at 5 p.m. Those voters will have until then to be able to cure those signatures that got pulled from being counted. And so there are also provision of the 134 provisional ballots that we processed and received. We have 18 of those that we still need additional verification from the voter to be able to count. There were 15 that we were able to already follow up till now to get the right information. And so, yeah, and so this will all be presented on that report. So I'm gonna like run in circles here, throwing numbers out. So, and I'll summarize the overall bottom line at the end of this.
If you didn't mention the number of regular ballots,
5,000 regular ballots that need to be cured. Sorry, 14. That's 14. 14 ballots, regular ballots that need their signatures cured. And then 18 provisional ballots still needing information. And then so that makes so that is a total of 32 ballots that still need curing. In addition to that, there are 21 ballots that are ready to count. So that means that that's the 15 provisional ballots that we have gotten all the correct information together to be able to count them. And then that also means 6 ballots that we received after we counted last night via the post or by USPS that had a valid postmark on them. All right, so I'm going to sum this all up. There are 53 total outstanding ballots that may remain to be counted that are in our possession at this time, and 21 of those are ready to count, and 32 of them are still need curing. I think that's the best sum up right there. Yeah, so it's actually to put that into context, I didn't pull the actual numbers from where we were at say after the day after election day on 22, but it doesn't strike me as a particularly large or bloated number of ballots still outstanding. We're in that 50 range, and that's about where I would expect it to be.
and you happen to have a breakdown of those numbers by district?
No, that is I believe that is information that we could provide. I would have to check in with my staff. And there are ways to, after we make our first contact with those ballots needing curing, there are ways for parties and candidates to request cure lists, and we still are, required in circumstances to share those lists. And that is a subject of kind of hot debate at the legislature for folks advocating for people's contact information not to be shared in that manner. That's all. Yeah, so grandcountyutah.net/elections is where that report will be up here by 5 p.m.
Do you know, Gabe, I know I'd been watching the lieutenant governor's overall percentage where we had been the top in the state for turnout. Did we end up at
Good
top of the?
question.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's impressive.
I could
I
look. at
haven't
her.
been able to take a,
we are.
to
Yeah.
really exhale since yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm in good spirits.
Yeah, we've
But I
been
didn't
top
have a
of the
chance to
state
do
day
all
by
the
day,
little,
so,
get all the
yeah.
little research in.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then Gabe, do we need to finalize a date for the Board of Canvassers? What is it, verification or we have to
So
pass it?
the
right?
first thing that we need to do, Dana and I need to schedule the final post-election audit.
Okay.
And so that needs to happen before we do the canvas.
Okay.
So that I think we have a tentative date in place, and we just need to finalize that because we've already had to tell the lieutenant governor's office our sort of projected time. It's just another one of those details that I just haven't had the time to
Sure.
finalize.
No worries.
Do you think it'll be on a regular commission day or a special day, or just for people's calendars?
It'll have to be between 7 and 14 days. So it technically could go all the way to the 19th when there is a scheduled commission meeting.
That'd be the very end of,
And as I suggested, if we might need to have another budget workshop next week, which I was actually really hoping for, it might be convenient to
Right,
marry
it would.
those two
Yeah.
efforts together.
for sure. Thank you. All right, thanks so much, Gabe. And I know you were here for 20 hours yesterday. Appreciate all the hard work you and your team did very much. Thanks.
Enjoy your daughter.
Yes. All right. Let's see. We'll keep our the rest of our elected official reports for the regular session there, and we'll move on. We have no presentations or department reports, so we'll move on to our agency reports, and we will welcome Lena Pace with the Southeast Utah National Parks Group Superintendent. And the agency report is on Arches National Park Visitor Access and Experience Plan. So Lena is joining us from Zoom. Welcome, Lena.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I'm sorry I can't be there in person with you all today. I'm visiting some family up in Seattle this week, and so was appreciated the opportunity to join you by Zoom. I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what you probably are already familiar with, our visitor access and experience planning up at Arches National Park. And most of my purpose for being here with you today is to speak to the public engagement opportunities related to the NEPA process, the public comment period that we're in right now. So I'm happy to take any questions afterwards if anyone has specific questions. And if there's anything I can't answer here on the spot, I will be happy to go back to our data and find an answer for you and get it to you forthwith. So I think overall, what I've witnessed since I've been at Arches National Park is that we see a healthier park and a healthier city and a healthier county when we have timed entry. As you are probably aware, over the last 20 years or so, visitation to Arches National Park, and I think visitation to Moab and Grand County as a whole, has increased by 73%. And the park was not built originally for that level of visitation. And so over the last 20 years, the Park Service has taken several actions, including increasing the amount of parking substantially within the park, widening the entrance roads, setting up parking lot attendants to try to manage parking, widening the entrance station roads, and adding a camera so that folks can log in and look at what traffic looks like at the entrance station. And despite all of those efforts, we have continued in recent years to have congestion issues, not only at the entrance station, but at the key locations in the park that people visit. Devil's Garden, the Windows, and Delicate Arch being the primary areas where we see a lot of congestion. Those issues were related to parking, they were related to visitor experience, they were related to congestion on the trails and at those key overlooks. I notice a beautiful image of Delicate Arch there on your seal right there that I'm looking at. And imagine being a visitor and walking up the trail with hundreds or even thousands of other people, and then getting up there and not being able to get a photo of Delicate Arch without hundreds of other people in your photo view. And so people weren't having a good experience up there at the park. Over the last 3 years, we've been piloting what we call a timed entry system, which is an hour by hour throughout the summer months from April to October reservation system for visitors. Visitors can either purchase a reservation 6 months in advance, or we release 40% of our tickets the night before. So 40% of the tickets at 7 p.m. the night before the day of entry, we release those tickets as well. So we see that ticket purchase is spread out over the course of that 6 months. They don't all go right away. And there are a portion of tickets that even from that 6-month mark are still available the night before or even the day of. What we've seen from the pilots is that they're working. We have reliable access to the park. Visitors know that they can get a reservation and enter the park. They'll have reliable parking. They'll be able to hike up the trail. They'll be able to see Delicate Arch without a lot of other people impeding their view. It's not decreased visitation. What it's done is it has spread visitation out across the hours of the day and across the days of the week. We have visitors reporting an improved visitor experience. They come back and they've had a better time. We've had improved parking access, very few temporary closures. Prior to piloting timed entry, as I'm sure you're aware, we sometimes had to close the park entirely until the park cleared out a certain number of people before we could open the entrance station again, and we haven't had to do that again. Importantly, and I think key to this conversation, is that a socioeconomic study was contracted. There was a private firm that did a socioeconomic study, and that study found no net negative impact to the local economy. In fact, it found the local economy continued to grow under the pilot. We've also had, like I said, positive feedback from visitors who, if they can't get into the park right away, are able to get a ticket generally either same day or the following day. And in the interim, they're visiting other sites in the area because there's so much to do in the Grand County area, right? They're going up to Canyonlands National Park or Dead Horse State Park, or they're going back into the city of Moab and having lunch and going shopping before they enter on their reservation. Within the community, we've noticed quite a bit of support. The city of Moab wrote us a letter of support last fall, supporting the timed entry system. We also have support from our concession holders, our permit holders who operate businesses in the park. And I do want to make a point that anybody who's coming into the park on a concession permit. So for example, a tour bus full of international visitors, they're able to get in without a timed entry permit. They don't need a timed entry because they have that permit to operate their business already. So anybody coming in to do a paid tour or operate a business, they are able to come in without a timed entry reservation. So I'll leave that there, although I'm happy to answer questions. I want to talk just a little bit about what we've got going on right now. We released our draft plan with a proposed alternative to continue that timed entry system. It was released on October 24th, and it's a 30-day comment period. So that comment period closes on Saturday, November 23rd, which is the weekend before Thanksgiving. We also have a couple of public meetings next week. On Wednesday, we have a virtual public meeting, so people can join from anywhere from 12 to 2. And then an in-person meeting at the Grand Center on Thursday, the 14th of November from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. So those are the two public meetings that are available for folks to come and learn more about the process, learn more about our timed entry system and our proposed alternative. And then we will also be walking people through the process if anyone needs help with the comment process online. Otherwise, you can get to our website, and I'm happy to follow up with an email if that would be helpful for that link. But you can go to our website, and right on the front page of Arches, there's a link that will take you to that page where you can provide public comment. All those public comments will be read individually, collated, and we'll adjust our draft plan according to what that public comment is. We are required, and we're grateful for the input, but we're required to consider it all. So all of those comments that come in, we will consider and incorporate into our plan. And then hopefully within the next couple of months, we'll put out a final plan and a final finding in terms of how we move forward. So we welcome the comments, we welcome the questions, we welcome the opportunity to have these conversations. It's really important to us that this works not only for our Park Service visitors, but also for the community of Moab and Grand County. We want to make sure that this is a positive process for everyone here. So I will leave it there. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And like I said, if there's anything I can't answer, I'm always happy to follow up with an email as well.
Thank you, Lena. Evan?
I, for one, as an individual, love the timed entry, so I'm really glad to see that being evaluated more. But I was curious if there was other strategies or tools being evaluated in this.
Yeah, so there's a number of, if you were to read the entire EA, which I realize not everyone will have the opportunity to do, there are a number of considerations that we or processes that we looked at and have dismissed, at least for this time. And I want to make a point that timed entry and this current plan is really a moment in time, right? We don't know how visitation is going to change in the future. And this plan, the way that it's written in our proposed alternative, really leaves a lot of flexibility so that we can continue to adjust in the future as visitation patterns change, et cetera. So we are considering, or we have considered other alternatives. For example, we considered a shuttle. Zion National Park, you might be familiar with, just right up the road. They have a mandatory shuttle where you're not able to drive your personal vehicle into the car. You get on a shuttle and it takes you to key locations. For a couple of reasons, we've decided not to consider that right now. That doesn't mean we won't consider it in the future, but there's not really an infrastructure for parking and for a shuttle program to exist here right now. We don't have infrastructure at the locations in the park either. And so that would take some development, some additional conversation around that economic opportunity, but that is something that we potentially could consider in the future. So that's an example of something that we're not doing right now, but that we are considering. You'll see a couple of different alternatives in our plan that we considered. One is our other alternative that's not our proposed alternative is a daily reservation system rather than an hour-by-hour reservation system. The concern there is that we would have the same congestion problems, because if people can come in anytime during a day, then they will continue to come in at those key hours, those key times, and continue to cause those congestion issues. So there's a number of things that we've considered. This reservation system does not, assuming we do go forward with this preferred alternative, it doesn't preclude us from future planning to continue to adjust to visitor needs and the needs of the community. So there's a number of different alternatives in there. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just to kind of, we have a draft letter and it speaks specifically to the timed entry, but in terms of the broader scope, you had mentioned the concessionaires and their ability to enter in. And I think that, you know, over the past few years, the areas that are permitted for commercial operations have actually shrank. And so by removing Fiery Furnace and other areas to commercial operations, it's actually concentrating use in a higher area. And it goes, it's kind of forcing the local economy to kind of bring people into those highest congestion areas that you mentioned. And I can definitely say that there's an interest for people who are coming to visit the area that want to experience more of that wilderness feeling that Arches is trying to protect, that they don't necessarily have that opportunity. They may not have the know-how, and they are definitely looking for guides to take them to other areas that aren't as congested. And so I think, you know, I would hope that considering areas like Fiery Furnace and Herdina Park and Clover Canyon and some of the other things that you know, we all like to enjoy, that you know, if we're able to share that with visitors, I think that could help with the visitor experience, the congestion, and some of the missions of the park. So that's just my 2 cents. And it's
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. I would say feel free to include that in a comment back to us so that we get that officially, but I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
It looks like Commissioner McCurdy is joining us on Zoom, and it looks like he has his hand raised online. Mike, go ahead and speak.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My question was to the timed entry. I'm not personally a fan of it. I do see the benefits. There are several benefits that come out of the time entry. But in that sense, how many of the visitor impact surveys were performed on the people that were actually turned away at the gate? Because I actually lead several of those bus tours, personally lead those bus tours up there. And in my short time at specifically gate times, I do see quite a few. I mean, if I'm there for 30 minutes, which again is not the best option, but that bus does take 30 minutes sometimes to get up the hill. I do see, I want to say an average of about 15 turnarounds, straight turnarounds at the roundabout, where guests are directly turned around at that point in time. I know that their visitor impact survey would be heavily skewed, and I understand that skewing of just not being able to show up to a national park and get in right at that minute, that time. A lot of our guests still don't know if they can. If they can show up to Moab and get into Arches. Yes, even in my personal dealings, we do pitch them to Canyonlands. We do, Dead Horse State Park, now hopefully Raptor State Park, to spread the load. But from a commissioner standpoint, I would really like to offer our ability to team up with Arches in that infrastructure. We have bike paths that go right out there. I really think that we should team up and put bike paths, off-road way. Just one idea there. If you need help with parking up there to get more throughput, we should, not to say Arches is the most important, but that's why most people come to our area. And if we're going to put money where our mouth is, we should be teaming up and helping you on some of these big ticket items, these infrastructure items.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Bill. Oh yeah, go ahead, Lena.
Oh, that's okay. Just briefly, I appreciate those comments, Commissioner, and I agree. Right, this isn't perfect, and it's not the silver bullet that's going to solve all the problems. I think it's a step in the right direction. It will require us to continue to monitor and continue to adjust moving forward, and I'm happy to have those conversations with you in the future. I do think we're on the same page in terms of messaging and making sure that this message is getting out. When we see a longer line, which sometimes there still is, generally what we find at the booth is that we have a higher percentage of people who are showing up and don't already have a reservation. If everyone in line has a reservation, then generally that line stays pretty short. And so we recognize the need to continue to really proactively message and get that word out. And I would welcome the opportunity to continue to work with this commission to make sure that we're targeting that in every different direction, right? We're actually looking at some additional signage on the roadway coming down from I-70. We're looking at the potential of maybe a billboard between arches across the river and before you get to the entrance to make sure that folks can see that during that time of year. We're working with the State Office of Tourism to make sure that we're messaging appropriately to our international visitors coming from other places. But we welcome the opportunity to continue that conversation and make sure that folks know that they need that timed entry. I can't measure what doesn't happen, right? It's hard to measure. It's hard to capture those people that do get turned around. I will say anecdotally, I've spent quite a bit of time down there at the roundabout and in the entrance stations this summer. And anecdotally, I see a lot of people that get turned around who later do show up in the park. Often they're able to either get a timed entry ticket for later that day. Sometimes almost immediately they're able to come right back in the park, or they come in after 4 or for the following day. So we do see a high percentage of folks who are able to get in, although we recognize certainly there are probably some who aren't able to make that work with their timing. But with that night before reservation release, we do find that most people are able to get in the following day if they're not able to get in on that day of. So I certainly understand those concerns, and we are working to make sure that we address them to the extent possible.
Thank you. Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, hi, Lena. Nice to see you again. I've got a couple of questions, and I guess the first one would be the times on the 13th and the 14th. I wasn't writing quick enough of your meeting.
Sure. On the 13th, it's from 12 to 2, and that is a virtual meeting. You can find that link on our website, or if anyone needs it, I'm happy to follow up with an email with that information. And then an in-person at the Grand Center is on the 14th, and that's 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And then just a couple of other questions. Are you looking to leave the times the same from 7 to 4 p.m. if you implement this in the future? And then I'll just give you them all, and then you don't have to, you can just answer at one time. And then, is it free to get into the park outside of the 7 to 4 p.m. time frame? Because I've heard some controversy about that and just would like to clarify that.
Both good questions. So timing wise, I mentioned we're trying to leave ourselves quite a bit of flexibility within this plan. So what you'll see in the proposed alternative actually has it from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which allows us to adjust within that time frame. So going forward into 2025, we believe we will continue to have that 7 to 4 time frame. However, we have the ability to adjust if we're seeing a change in visitation. And I'm sorry, you're going to have to excuse me because I have to plug my laptop in here. So stand by. And then in terms of getting into the park between 4 p.m. and 7 a.m., the entrance station hours and the timed entry hours aren't always necessarily the same. We do generally keep the entrance stations open until 6, so you will still pay a fee to get into the park, but you will not need that timed entry reservation. You can come in anytime.
So it would then be, it wouldn't be free until after 6. You're saying there's potential for that to be still open there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Those were my questions.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else have a question or a comment for Lena while she's here? All right. Thanks very much, Lena. We appreciate having you, and thanks for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
All right. We are now on to our general reports. We'll start with commission member disclosures. Any member of the commission have anything they need to disclose about any of the agenda items on today? Evan?
I feel like I should disclose that I have a commercial use authorization with Arches National Park.
All right. Anybody else? I think Mike already told me he didn't, so. All right, we'll get on to general commission reports and future considerations. Mike, you're on Zoom, so I guess I'll go ahead and start with you if you're ready. Mike, are you available right now? All right, I'll go to Kevin, and then Mike just raise your hand if you can hear me. Just let me know when you're ready, and you can be the next one to present. Thanks.
I think my recent commissioner activities are going to be discussed in other agenda items or other places.
Okay. Evan?
Yeah, the end of the month is usually pretty slow for me, and I think a lot of attention was going towards the elections and that. Besides that, it's just kind of finalizing some budgets for approval this upcoming month. So if anyone is interested in the cemetery budget or the Canaan's Healthcare District or the EMS, those will all be discussed in this month's meetings.
All right, Bill. Yeah, I've had a couple of meetings, one that I'll just put out just a little bit of information about briefly, and I've shared it with Amy also, but I spoke at a couple of different meetings now with a gentleman named George Ruther, and he is with Vail Indeed.
Bill?
Vail. And so they have a program for housing, and I think that it's worth going to their website and watching their 6-minute video, and they have a program where they pay the down payment for people to get into housing in exchange for a deed restriction. And it's quite interesting. With my notes here, they have acquired over 1,300 to date homes in the Vail area that are deed restricted. And it isn't limited to any income, as long as you are a member of the community, working in the community. That deed restriction then stays with the house. And I think the thing that was the most interest to me was that their assessor has decided or assessed that those houses lose no value with the deed restriction on them. So there is no loss to their county with the taxes that are then collected on their property. So a lot of interest, and Amy and I are discussing it, enough on that one.
And what is the deed restriction, Bill? It has to go to a local?
Yes, it
Yeah.
has to go to another local.
And then they have a
30+ hours.
30+ hours, okay.
30 is.
Bill, I don't mean to cut in. Could you speak into that microphone?
Oh, so sorry. Thank you. So there a lot of benefit.
Yeah.
And they have amassed a huge amount of housing this way for locals. And of course, Vail does see condominiums a lot more than we have here. So he mentioned that sometimes they'll go in and buy a block of 20 or 30 of them and then refurbish them if they need it. And then they will sell them then to anybody that wants to buy one of those properties. And it's also available to business owners. They don't care who buys it, as long as the individual living in there meets their criteria. And so it's a very interesting video. I was impressed.
How do you get to the video?
Do you mind sending us the link?
Sure, I'll send
Okay,
everybody the
that'd
link,
be
but it's Vail Indeed, INDEED.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
that'd be
then-
awesome.
Yeah, we actually had presentations from them years ago through the housing task force. And I don't, so if you're looking into some of that, there may be some old correspondence from P and Z department, 'cause they were who brought them in.
Yeah, very interesting. They also allow somebody to then buy out that restriction if they choose, but the number is astronomical. And he said he's amazed at how many people will eventually do it. It's a 3-to-1, I believe, or close to that ratio. So if they provided 100,000 on a $500,000 home, somebody has to pay 300,000 to get out of that. And they use that money then again for future homes for other people. So it was a very good discussion. It leads into another meeting that took place that I was part of up in Salt Lake, and that was the Sutherland Institute. And Steve Waldrop and the governor both spoke there, and it was on housing as well. And I will also forward, there was an AEI, and please don't ask me, I don't remember what the AEI stands for, but I will forward that also on housing. And it was a big study from the federal level all the way to the local level. What else was I in the middle of? Let's see, I had an airport board meeting. There were, I believe, 8 applicants to sit on the board. Wow, very amazing. It was narrowed down to 2, and then by vote, it was narrowed down that they would forward to the commission Rachel Paxman, who I believe is working for Contour Air. And so a little bit of representation that from the companies providing our service out there would be sitting on the board. So that'll be coming to us, and they're hoping to get that at the next meeting on the agenda. I was also part of a community development policy steering committee, and there's definitely some legislation that's gonna be around housing at the state this year. And I've also spoke a little bit with Amy about that and follow up, and she and I both have spent some time speaking with Mr. Waldrop. And I don't have a bill number yet, but I do know that it's gonna be, the one that I did hear about was Neil Walter is gonna be running that bill, so.
Is that coming out of the Senate or the House?
What's that?
Is it coming out of the Senate or the House of Representatives?
I didn't write which one he was. My
Okay.
apologies.
Sure, no, I can look it up.
But I believe he's a representative, and I think that's all I've got.
All right, let's see, Mike, are you ready to report? Get him next time. Trish?
Okay. Just a couple meetings, a couple things. So we had a planning commission meeting on the 28th. CZB came to do their presentation on the land use chapter of the general plan. Just a couple things, and that they're gonna, I think, Amy, they're gonna present to the commission also. So. Okay, so, maybe I don't need to really go over that, but they did an excellent job. I think a lot of it we'll find, anyways, it was great, so I'll just wait for that. The one thing that I did want to touch upon that Amy presented was, as of in the legislative session of 2023, Senate Bill 174 was passed. And this has to do with residential subdivisions, single family duplexes or townhouses, not multifamily. Basically, usually currently the final plat goes all the way to the county commission. This bill basically takes the county commission out of that equation. The county commission will no longer make those decisions. Those decisions will be made by a land use authority, and we will be basically figuring out who that authority will be, whether it's the head of planning and zoning or the planning commission. A couple other things about that. Preliminary plats, there will be no public hearing, no public hearing. 15 business day approval for complete application. So basically what this is saying, and I'll say a couple more things, final application has to occur within 20 days. There will be no more than 4 review cycles allowed, and there is an appeal process. So basically what it's saying is county commission is being taken out of that equation. And they're just pushing that these processes will be much faster. I don't know. We'll probably touch on this more. Is that okay? And then I had a mosquito abatement meeting, and they're just working on their budget. And at this point, larval and adult activities are basically gone. And that's about it. And then on that, I also want to make a statement. I would like to make a statement regarding a social media post that has appeared in the last few months. There was a number of social media posts regarding my emails obtained via Grandma Request. In this request, it is noted that I sent an email from my personal account to my county email account. I am currently working with the county attorney to provide them access to any personal emails that may relate to county business. I also want to take the time to apologize to our county attorney and his staff for a statement that I made on social media that implied that his actions were political in nature. This comment was at the time flippant and inappropriate, and it is not my intent to discredit the county attorney and or his staff.
Thank you, Trish. And I think Stephen had something he'd like to share too.
And I want to thank Commissioner Dean for being able to one, for making the statement and addressing the issue. I appreciate your willingness to interface with me in my office and work with me. I also want to thank Jacques. Jacques really took a lot of efforts to reach out to myself and to Commissioner Hedin, and I've indicated to the commission chair that I don't think the $4,000 is worth the amount of stress and anxiety that it puts him through at times. And I just really appreciate both him and Commissioner Hedin working with me and kind of getting through some difficult conversations. And I think it wouldn't have had as good of a turnout, but for your helping me communicate. And again, I appreciate Commissioner Hedin's communicating with me as well.
Thanks. All right, let's see. We got Mike. Are you there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome, dude. You're up.
Actually stepped into a budget advisory committee meeting for Bill. In that meeting, everything has changed over today, at least my thought process and the outlook of the meeting. In that meeting, I got the overall take that we were at 1% above, and now after our little workshop today, we are 1.9% below. So thoughts have flipped a little bit on that, but we'll be updating that. But that was my only meeting today, or for this week.
Thank you, Mary.
Yes, on the 17th, the Canyon Country Partnership had their meeting at the Utah National Historic Museum, and we were honored with the opportunity to go in the back and see the different types of collections they have that are not on display or are rotated in and out. It was fascinating. It was really fascinating. On the 22nd, there was a facility meeting. It was just a beginning discussion on how to move forward to decide how to deal with our facility. On the 23rd, I had an economic opportunity meeting, which will be continued tomorrow. We talked a lot. There was very good discussion, very active and good discussion on how we can make sure that the Trail to Tomorrow doesn't become a death. That's great. And how to, make the economic portion of the general plan stronger and more effective. So with the use of the Trail to Tomorrow, taking that and implementing it finding a way we could better implement it to our general plan. So I'm really excited about that. I enjoy that board a lot. I had on the 31st a meeting with HASU. We had a long discussion. The meeting usually takes an hour, and it was almost a 2-hour meeting on moving forward with the success that we've had with Royal Crossing ideas and such of moving forward to continue developing of affordable and assured housing. And through that discussion and such, it became amply clear that if that's going to happen, there's going to have to be some money put forth by the city and the county in order to really bring on that kind of success. And so I think everybody saw my email where I would like to see $100,000 put away in a discretionary fund when the plan comes to fruition to make more affordable housing. We will have the money there to assist. And we're going to be working with the city on this as well. And I believe that was everything I had to.
All right. Thank you, Mary. It seemed like I was super busy for the last few weeks, but not a whole bunch of.
I was busy too.
Not a whole bunch of meetings, lots of pre-election stuff and everything else, and lots of smaller meetings. But anyway, I did have a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and at that meeting, we mostly talked about preparing for the annual Chamber of Commerce banquet, which will be this weekend. So, unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town this weekend. But if you have the opportunity, then go support the Chamber, and it's usually a great event. Other than that, I just had a really quick audit update. Based on our Friday meeting and the letter that we approved to send to the auditor, Stephen and Quinn and Alicia, and we're super helpful in getting that drafted and put on our letterhead, and so we did send that off to the auditor at about 11:30 on Monday morning, and we are eagerly awaiting a response. That's all I got. So let's move on to our elected official reports, and let's see, Gabe already gave his, so Stephen, you're up.
had an opportunity to attend a Sea Haven event where they honored Judge Welsh O'Donnell and Andrea Noyes. It was very nice. That they were recognized for their work and efforts in domestic violence prevention and addressing that. That was very nice to see. Had continuing meetings with BART, P&Z, and outside counsel for other projects that we have going on. Attended the UPC training. We worked with the AG's office that had a operation with the ICAC team, the sheriff's department, that resulted in an arrest that went off without a hitch. We got a great presentation. It's telling commissioners about it, but then I'm also not inviting all the commissioners to it. But I'm inviting Commissioners McGann and Dean to a presentation that the CJ is putting on. If other commissioners weren't invited, I can talk to Andrea to see if there is space available. But it's a presentation put on about child inappropriate conduct with child and the predators that take advantage of them. It was a great presentation that was put on at the CJC Symposium. It is terrifying and interesting and informative. We're going to be putting it on for teachers, social workers, and some other people to notice kind of the ways in which individuals act and operate and take advantage of things. And it was a wonderful presentation, but it's going to be on December 2nd. And we're going to send out the invitation to teachers and the folks that should be attending it. It's going to be great if commissioners want to see. I think that's it could be appropriate for commissioners to attend it, but it's going to be
December 2nd.
Yeah, December 2nd. I sent a link out, and I think that's going to be a good indicator because we've got a lot of law enforcement activity with addressing different things with the youth. And so, without going into too much detail, but that's going on. We are eagerly anticipating a response from the auditor's office. I want to thank Economic Development did help get some additional documents together. The time study that was requested by the auditor's office. We sent that to them, and we're just eagerly waiting a response so we can finalize that. That's everything I have.
Thank you, Stephen. Jameson's not on, I don't think, is he? Okay. All right, let's move on to our Commission Administrator report. Quinn?
I attended the Atlas Park Committee meeting. I attended the facilities meeting with Mary, several other meetings, most of them you guys have mentioned. I will note that the DOE reached out to us this last week and asked if we wanted a no strings attached extension for the grant. I responded, yes, absolutely, and I haven't heard back yet. So more to come on that, hopefully. Very, very good news. So that's all.
All right, awesome, Quinn, thanks. All right, reached the end of general reports, it looks like, and we don't have any public hearings, so let's move on to our general business action items. And our first action item is our nonprofit use exemption for parcel number 01-0B19-0009. And presenting this one is Abigail Taylor, our executive director, as well as Vanessa Bylily, deputy executive director. So welcome forward. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, come forward. You can sit at the table. Ben knows the routine. Are you here with?
If it's possible for me to just join her up there, chair of the board.
Yeah.
Abby Kevin.
Okay, absolutely, Ben. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yes, we are requesting nonprofit status for the property next to our campus that was recently purchased for our expansion project. We're hoping to expand from sheltering 8 residents to 16.
I think that's good.
Yeah, and we have supporting documents in the in the packet as well.
And additionally, we received, my office requested additional documents. They provided those documents. We didn't put them in the packet, but it was their bylaws, formation documents, 501c3 thing. So we've signed off on those. I don't know if there's any other information from the assessor's treasurer's office that went through the gambit of all the elected officials of the county for good measure. So.
Okay, Trish? Or Kevin? Go ahead, Kevin.
I move to approve the nonprofit exemption status for parcel 01-0B19-0009.
Thank you. And second from Kevin. All right, a motion to approve from Commissioner Hedin, a second from Commissioner Walker.
Mike's got his hand up.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mike. I can't see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, I was seconding that. Don't worry. I was trying to be faster than everyone.
You'll find
Let's
Mike
try,
on
Mike.
on the Zoom meetings. It's pretty hard to make motions in second. I usually when the few times I've been on there, I just kind of
My overall score is gonna go down. It's okay. Don't worry.
That is exactly right.
Yeah, you might be the only one keeping score though, so it's probably not a big deal.
I'm keeping score.
Okay. Anyway, we do have the motion on the table. Any further discussion on this? And I think, so this is, we did approve this for a partial year of relief last year, right? Because the parcel was purchased in the middle of the year. Okay, so this is going forward. And then Stephen, does this need to be approved yearly, or once we've approved it, it's
This isn't my wheelhouse, but I think, once we approve, I think it's good, but
it's until we unapprove it, I guess?
I don't know. It's not, it went, when we played, we chased our tail a little bit. I went and tried to find.
Certainly
There's
there's,
a list, Chris Kaufman, it'll end up on a list.
Yeah.
Okay.
That we approve.
That's
I do
my-
think they're annual renewals.
They're
My-
okay.
I want to back that up with some research, but I think that's my
I
memory
think
from
it is
time
once
at the
a
clerk's
year
office.
we approve.
Okay.
There's
Well,
not
once a year.
That would make sense.
but it'll be grouped with all the other
I
nonprofits.
think.
Right,
that's
okay.
probably a-
Yeah, right.
an
It's
all
just
the
bundled.
You don't have to come here every year.
All right. Okay.
Simple process.
Any other discussions or questions? All right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And Mike, you're gonna have to say aye
Aye.
or nay, depending. All right, vote, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you for all you guys do there.
All right, agenda item 2 is our Summit Food Service contract for the county jail. And presenting this is Shan. And it looks like Shan is online. So you can go ahead and unmute Shan and present this agenda item.
All right. Sorry, I'm at home, but screaming in the background. So I'll make this brief. So we've already been using Summit. It's a commissary company. We've been using them before I was jail commander. I think we started using them with them in 2017. It was discovered earlier this year that I guess there was never a contract put in place. They're just asking for a contract to be put in place. Doesn't cost any money. This is just necessary services to inmates able to purchase things like sodas, chips, just random stuff that they would like to purchase, or their families can send in stuff. So that's all that is.
Okay.
And
Thank
it's
you,
gone through legal review with the county attorney's office as well.
Great. Kevin?
I move to approve the Summit Food Service contract for the county jail.
Thanks. And Bill seconds. All right, any further discussion or questions for Shan? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And Mike, verbal.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Item 3, resolution for the conditional use permit for a general daycare. And this one is the first of many for Amy. Welcome, Amy.
The applicant is here, Tammy, so I just invited her to come up with me and I'll just do a quick summary and then she's here if you have any questions or if she'd like to inform you on anything. So this is a CUP for a general daycare. You have the information in your packet. And Tammy has operated a daycare before here in this area. And she recently moved to a new location and is trying to get set up, and this is a general daycare, which allows more than 8 children at a time at the daycare. She did a great job with her narrative and her site plan. She had a pre-app with staff. She's been waiting for a while because staff has been so swamped, and so we really appreciate that. Staff has recommended approval. If you have any questions, Tammy is here. Do your thing.
I have a question for you, Amy. This is basically kind of in that area that we've identified as a node or a future node. Is that correct? It's
It is
not. Okay, for some reason I had it in my mind that it
Yeah.
was right there around like Tom Tom's. Is that not
She's
correct?
above that.
Okay.
The property is up,
But-
Murphy Lane.
Okay, but
Kind of near, Murphy Flats.
Right, just Murphy Lane.
by Fuller Murphy.
And is it,
Okay.
was this,
Actually, I can see Murphy Flats.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sorry,
and was it the lily pad that you originally
Lily
had?
pad.
Okay, right.
Lily pad one was on the corner.
Was it right on the corner there? Yeah. Okay.
This is just up on the other end of the trailer park.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
Bill?
I move to approve the proposed resolution approving the conditional use permit for a general daycare as per the staff reported dated October 21, 2020.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay. Trish, all right, motion from Commissioner Winfield to approve, second from Commissioner Hedin. Kevin?
Just a general question. Do CUPs like this, do they trigger a notification of neighbors the way a zone change would?
They do not.
Thanks.
And I had one question. You said it allows for more than 8, but what is the total, just out of curiosity, that would be allowed there?
So as per state licensing, it's 16.
Thank you.
More daycares needed.
I have people waiting.
sure
And
you
I've
do.
just been waiting.
I'm sure you do. So we,
All right, I have a motion on the table. Any further discussion before I call for a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hands.
Aye.
Thanks, Mike. It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
All right, on to agenda item 4, resolution for the amended final plat for All American Acre subdivision lot 14, amendment 2. Amy Weiser again.
Pull up the plat so you can see it while we're talking. Okay, this is basically what we call a property boundary adjustment or a lot line adjustment, but because this is in a platted subdivision, it requires a plat amendment to process the lot line adjustment. So there's 2 separate properties, 2 separate owners. They have both agreed to the lot line adjustment. And per the staff report, I mentioned that so right now, one parcel is 2.62 acres, the other is 2.5. They're both zoned similar zoning, and so rural residential. So after the adjustment, parcel 1 will go down to 1.629 acres, and parcel 2 will increase to 3.492. So they will both still meet the minimum requirements for the zone. And they meet all the requirements for the subdivision and the amended plat. So,
Okay.
do you have any questions?
Is this like a situation where like one landowner might sell the other one, just a little piece of their property?
Most likely.
Yeah, okay, just curious. Okay, great.
And for disclosure, I know the owner that's doing the selling.
Okay, sure.
So, but I will make the motion.
Sure, yeah.
If we're ready. I move to approve the proposed resolution approving the amended final plat amendment for All American Acres subdivision lot 14 for the purpose of adjusting a shared property line between 2 adjacent lots as per the staff report dated October 22, 2024. And just for clarification, I know this gentleman because he's works at Turner Lumber and I see him when I walk in there, so it isn't.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All right, motion to approve from Commissioner Winfield and a second from Commissioner Hedin.
I do have
any-
a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I couldn't quite hear it. This is both owners are on board.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
As they would have to be.
And just for information, sometimes you'll have, like out in the valley especially, sometimes you'll have like not wonderful survey lines, or there's a myriad of reasons where you need additional space.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't trigger otherwise, and so it has happened a couple times where you have like, you just need to adjust a little bit, and there's usually some compensation.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Bill made the motion, Trish seconded it. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands. And
Aye.
Mike, thank you. Unanimous again.
we're going.
Know it. All right, on to item 5, resolution for the final plat of the Marshall Van Horn subdivision. Amy.
Yes, so this is final plat for this proposed subdivision. It is love the staff. So this is on Roberts Drive. The current size of the property is 2.4 acres. It is zoned rural residential. They're requesting just a 2-lot minor subdivision. The criteria and code standards that apply are in your staff report. They do require, it is located along the county road. It is currently developed to county standards, and as such, no roadway improvements are required. There is a roadway dedication of 0.20 acres that will be recorded as part of the plat. And a drainage waiver has been approved by the county engineer. So no additional site improvements are required. We did request that there be an easement, as you will see on the plat, where there's a natural historic drainage way. So you'll see that we have an easement on that. It's a 20-foot wide. So we went a little bit more. And so everything is good to go.
Okay, great. Bill?
I move to approve the findings of fact set forth in the staff report dated October 21, 2024, and the proposed resolution approving the final plat of Marshall Van Horn subdivision with the following conditions. Dedication of right-of-way and existing shed will no longer meet side yard setbacks and must be moved to comply or removed.
I'll second that.
All right, good. We're Bill and Trish are on a roll. Mike, you're losing your contest.
Losing too many
Wrapping
numbers
up,
here.
Mike.
Any other questions on this one or comment? Looks like not. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Item 6, a resolution approving the interlocal cooperation agreement, or ILA, with the city of Moab for joint administration of the Safe Streets for All SS4A grant award. And Dan is presenting this, and our county engineer, and Dan is joining us online. Hi, Dan.
Hello. So this has been a long time in the making. In your packet there was a letter of support that the commission sent to the city supporting application for this grant back in 2023. This is a federal Department of Transportation planning grant. The scope of the grant is primarily for corridor study and preliminary design, concept design of Mill Creek Drive from 4th East all the way out to Spanish Valley Drive. That's kind of the city portion of the grant. We also included some corridor study looking at Spanish Valley Drive and Spanish Trail Road. That's kind of the county portion of the grant. There's also some elements that deal with the cities wanting to adopt a complete streets ordinance and some other things. At any rate, this sets the terms between us and the city of administering. The city is going to administer the grant because they have a dedicated person to do so, and also they have a bigger portion of the project. So this basically is the agreement between the county and the city that says we'll pay our share and we'll participate to this extent. Any questions?
Does the grant cover anything that would potentially have to do with the multi-use pathway along there?
Well, the corridor studies for Spanish Valley Drive, which should certainly include that aspect, and we've already kind of got it in the works and plan. So, but corridor study typically looks at things like access, width of the road, intersection functionality, whether driveways should be limited in location and size and those sorts of things. So some of those are key components certainly to the Spanish Valley Drive pathway, but the grant is a planning grant and it explicitly can't be used for any kind of construction implementation stuff. So
but the planning
get
could
some
be
more
helpful.
planning, yes. Actually, one thing that I really like to get out of this is looking at an intersection design for Spanish Valley Drive, Spanish Trail Road, and how the pathway interfaces with that intersection through there is actually one of the key priorities that I see for this. And then we also looking at connectivity from the pathway out to other neighborhoods, whether it's up Resource Boulevard to the highway or some things like that is included in the scope.
Kevin?
I move to approve the attached resolution approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with the city of Moab for joint administration of grant funds awarded by the Federal Highway Administration under the Safe Streets and Roads for All program to implement components of the 2022 Unified Transportation Master Plan.
Thank you. Bill seconds. All right, motion to approve from Commissioner Walker, second from Commissioner Winfield. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands.
Aye.
Thank you. And that one
Thank
passes.
you all.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it. All right, we're on to agenda item 7, and this is consideration of an offer for county administrator. So we have, I'll give a little background here. We've been looking for an administrator for quite a few months, and to that effort, we formed a small group of us. Bill and Trish, myself, Quinn and Alicia were involved originally. We had a couple of rounds of interviews, and we decided on a gentleman named Mark Tyner. And after we made that decision, Stephen got involved, and we had some negotiations, and I thank Stephen greatly for helping us negotiate that. But anyway, we are now at the point where we would like to make Mr. Tyner an offer, and this is approving that offer. And I'd turn it over to Stephen. If you have anything else to add, Stephen?
Just briefly, I had all the greatest intentions of having a full contract drafted for you folks for today, but I didn't have that completed. We have the terms all laid out in the attachments that will be adjusted slightly with signature blocks and other information. But essentially, this provides Mr. Tyner, one of the things that he requested was a bit of severance pay because he's relocating from
Alabama.
Thank you. I was making sure.
Yes.
We did indicate, talk to him, let him know that we are letting people know he exists.
Yeah.
And so he's excited about the move out. We've provided some front-loaded vacation time to assist with life and travel and everything else, and then agreed based on his years of expertise and work that he would be in the higher category of the top category of vacation accrual. All the other benefits are laid out. Additionally, a moving expense, everything's laid out. All the terms are there. If commissioners had any questions, technically he will be an at-will employee, but with the protection of if there's a termination or a no-cost termination, then he gets paid 6 months severance pay. So all the terms are laid out. It's not exactly in contract form. That's why the motion is requested that you guys authorize me to draft the motion and then
To draft the contract.
draft the contract.
Great.
And then Chair Hadley will make the final steps and we'll send out to Market. And I believe he has a start date of December 2nd.
It was December 2nd was the date that we discussed it. Yeah, exactly. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working with Mr. Tyner, and he's got a long many years of experience running county governments that are similar size to quite a bit larger than Grand County. He's excited to move out to Grand County. He was able to visit with his family recently. Some of us did meet with him here and kind of show him around the county areas that be of concern. And I couldn't be more pleased. I think it took a really long time. I think we put in the hard work, and I'm excited to have someone of Mark's quality coming on board. Trish.
I move to approve and authorize the attorney to draft and the chair to execute a contract with Mark Tyner for the Grand County Commission Administrator positioned as outlined in the attachment.
Thank you. Bill, second. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Curious, do we or somebody need to notify Steve, I guess, Vowels that this will be then included in our budget for next year?
I think it's budgeted for. I looked for that, but it's been a few days, but I'm pretty sure it's there.
Most of the positions carry over and have.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, but good question, Bill. Yeah. Yep. All right. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. And the motion passes unanimously. All right, we're on to agenda 8, item 8, letter of support for the draft plan / environmental document for Arches visitor access and experiences with Arches National Park. And it looks like Trish is the presenter on this.
Well, I think what I want to do, if you guys are okay with this, I want to table it. I didn't provide it. The letter was quite vague.
Okay.
And so I think with Lena's presentation and I will go to one of those meetings next week and then I'll draft it again and send it out to you guys for any kind of, edits, if you're good with that. And also we'll delay it until I think it's the 19th, but that will be in time for the they need it by the 23rd. Are you guys good with that?
I would think that we would want to incorporate
Yep,
some of what Evan
absolutely.
and also
Yep.
what Mike.
Yep, I wrote
said.
I wrote those
that I
things
think
down.
would Be good to at
Yep.
least get in the letter.
Yep, I wrote those down. So yeah,
Okay,
it was
great.
quite vague and so I
Yeah.
feel like I need to.
I just wasn't kind of sure of the scope of their study, and
Right.
if that was part of it.
Yep.
And I mean, if it's not, too worried about
Yep.
money, waters, it is all we have
Right,
in
right,
here.
But yeah, I will go to that meeting and then redraft it and let you guys take a look.
Do we need to make a motion to table or can we just, I guess yeah, we can just move on, right?
Dead in the water.
That's what I mean, I
Yeah.
think most people on the commission like to formally postpone things, but I've always been an advocate for just
Yeah,
moving on.
we're not doing that. I agree. All right. Okay, great. We'll move on to, and thank you, Trish, for taking that on too.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Item 9, letter of support for the nomination of a boundary increase for the Wolf Ranch Historical District at Arches National Park. And this one, it was also drafted by Commissioner Hedin.
Yeah, so the commission received a letter at the end of September, notifying of basically, excuse me, I'm kind of flip-flopping back and forth. The nomination was sent to the National Registry of Historic Places for additional documentation and boundary increases to be prepared for the Wolf Ranch within Arches National Park. Just a quick little kind of background, the summary from their application. The 203-acre Wolf Ranch Homestead in Arches National Parks, Cache Valley in Grand County is anchored by a single-family, single-pen log cabin constructed in 1907. Its associated dugout cellar and wood-fenced corral. These 3 resources and 70 acres of supporting site include Wolf's Freshwater Spring, the Ute petroglyph panel and fence lines to the north and east. These were listed in the National Historic Register in 1975 and the Wolf Ranch Historic District with a somewhat arbitrary boundary and a brief description. This amendment renames the district to the Wolf Ranch Homestead Historic District, encompassing the homestead, herein in a cluster of dwellings, livestock, corral, and former garden area and surrounding homestead claim, herein the legal extent of 160 acres, worked 1898 to 1910 by the Wolves within a claim patented by the subsequent owner in 1942. This amendment expands the boundary to include the full extent of the homestead to the larger site, including the 1920 Southwest livestock fence, which retained the supporting Wolf's Freshwater Spring to the northwest and strongly associated 1907 cabin and dugout cellar plus corrals. And so this is basically just a letter supporting that designation. It doesn't go outside the park boundaries. It's not like, it's all within Arches National Park. And so I just wrote a little letter in support of that.
Great.
I can
Yeah.
read the letter I can, but
Thanks.
pretty brief.
No, yeah, and we had the opportunity to read it. I read it. It's great. I think it
Okay,
says
thank
everything that needs to be said. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting. I love historic stuff.
Yeah.
And that's certainly a cool area and
Yeah.
it'll actually add to the attractions of our
Yep. I think
National
so
Park.
too. Yeah, it's really fun reading that history.
Kevin.
I move to approve the letter of support for the nomination for boundary increase for the Wolf Ranch Historical District at Arches National Park.
Great.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion to approve from Kevin, second from motion to approve from Commissioner Walker, second from Commissioner Hedin. Any other discussion of the letter? All right. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hands.
Aye.
Thank you.
Was
And
it
that,
feasible that agenda, everything was unanimous?
yeah, well,
That
one
entire
postponed.
agenda? Everybody's like,
It's a very rare occurrence.
very quick.
And quick. Yeah.
Brian, do not get used to that. Do not get used to that. I want to state that.
Yeah. Maybe it's because the election's actually over. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have let's see, approval of meeting minutes, which we don't have for approval. So we'll get to that at our next meeting. We do have ratification of payment of bills, and let me pull those up real quick. Those bills are in the amount of $781,488.34. Payroll in the amount of $385,156.82 for total bills and payroll in the amount of $1,166,645.16. We also have 2024 USU cooperative agreement. Item D, volunteer appointment to the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service Districts. And that's because we had the number of candidates was the same as the number of spots available. We have ratification of the letter of support for the Brownfields Coalition, and we have the ratification of the Office of Emergency Management State Homeland Security Program, also known as SHSP Grant Award Letter.
To approve this consent agenda,
Sorry, Evan. With the exception of item A.
with the exception of item A.
Great. And I'll take that as a second, Evan. All right, so motion to approve the consent from Commissioner McGann, second from Commissioner Clapper. All those in favor of the motion? And that passes unanimously. All right, we've reached the end of our regular.
Do you want to try and do just a second call for citizens to be heard?
Oh yeah, it is 6. Yes, so we
Have a closed session.
will likely go into closed session. It is 20 till 6. So we'll probably go through the 6 o'clock hour. I am not sure how long that will be, but if there's anyone who is here on Zoom who would like to make a comment, I would invite you to come forward at this point and make a comment. You can unmute and speak or just raise your hand. Looks like no one, anyone in the chambers? All right. All right, thank you. I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I move to go into closed session to discuss character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes unanimously.
Andrew, go get some sleep.
Oh man, it's been a while. All right, we'll go into closed session.